Chapter 8:15. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan looked at each other and saw the doubt in each other's eyes. This Prince Rui was so attentive to Shen Miao, no matter how one looked at it, as if he really liked Shen Miao? Was that even possible? Shen Miao had only seen Prince Rui a few times. Luo Ling's eyes were so dim that one could not see the light. He lowered his head and looked at the ground, as if he could see a flower on the ground. Everyone in the room had different expressions and Shen Miao's reaction was rather dull. She nodded and said to Tai Yi, "Thank you." Tai Yi hurriedly said that he didn't dare, and explained that he still had things to send over in a few days before leaving. After Tai Yi left, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan had already sensed something unusual. If one were to say that Prince Rui's aim was to sow discord between the Shen family and the imperial family of Ming-Chi, or to make the Shen family unable to be used by the imperial family of Ming-Chi, then when the imperial edict came down, Prince Rui's aim had already been achieved. Since he had achieved his goal, nothing else mattered. Why was there such a big lineup? No matter how much money there was, it would not pressure one's hands. Unless the great Liang's treasury was small and could not pile up the money, then they would impatiently run over to Ming-Chi and hand over this monstrous wealth to the Shen family as a dowry. Wasn't that unnecessary? It was Shen Qiuwei who noticed this point and said angrily, "This Prince Rui is a weasel paying respects to a chicken and does not have any good intentions? Sending so many things, do you think that my Shen family is greedy for wealth? We are marrying a young lady, not selling a young lady. With so much money, who knows what other people will think of the Shen family?" Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan were silent. That was true. Even the royal family would be envious of this betrothal gift, let alone the commoners. What was even more amazing was that these were sent over by Prince Rui of the Great Liang. Even those who had thoughts about these betrothal gifts did not dare to act rashly and only dared to look at it. One did not know how many people were unable to sleep in the Ding capital at night. Especially Shen Xian's enemies, they would probably vomit blood. Luo Tan smiled and said, "No matter what, brother-in-law's generosity is much better than being stingy. If a man is willing to spend money on a girl, then that's a good man. Before marrying into the family, he has already given Biao youngest sister so many things. If Biao youngest sister were to marry into the family, she would definitely not be treated poorly in the field of food and clothing." Luo Tan had always been straightforward with her words and did not know how to conceal them. But when she said, "brother-in-law," it made the corners of people's eyes hurt. Shen Xian covered his head. "Where are we going to pile these things?" "That's right," Luo Shuiyan also said worriedly, "we can't store so many things in our house." There was not enough jewelry and antiques in the warehouse, and there were also furniture and fabrics. "Do you want to build a granary in the mansion to store things?" Shen Miao wanted to laugh when she heard it and said, "Did he not buy all those residences? After he leaves, those residences will belong to the Shen family. How about buying a few guards and sending some things over? Why don't you just stay in Prince Rui's residence?" Shen Xian shook his head. "Yanqing Lane is not a place we can stay in. That was where the relatives of the imperial family stayed. Who knew what outsiders would think if Shen Xian and the rest stayed there?" Thinking of Tai Yi's words, a flash of pain appeared in her eyes. "He will leave after the end of the year." Jiao, after the end of the year, Shen Miao would go to the Great Liang. Everyone in the room became silent. Parting, especially between family members, was never a pleasant thing. When Shen Miao saw that, she was afraid that they would be sentimental and quickly changed the topic. "Prince Rui had sent so many betrothal gifts, how will the dowry be calculated?" Luo Tan was feeling a little thirsty and picked up the tea on the table to take a sip. When she heard that, she spurted out a mouthful of tea and sprayed it all over Luo Ling. But at this moment she was not in the mood to care if Luo Ling's clothes were dirty and said, "Dowry? Heavens!" Chapter 8:16. Everyone in the Shen family felt as if they had been struck by a thunderbolt. Logically speaking, the amount of betrothal gifts that were given, the dowry in return would not be much different. Even though it need not be more than the betrothal gifts, it could not be too little. Otherwise, when the young lady went to the in-laws' house, she would be suppressed. If the dowry was very generous and even more than the betrothal gifts, it would be glorious when one married over. Thus, the more favored the young lady married, the closer the amount of dowry and betrothal gifts. Not to mention that Shen Exin doted on his daughter, but this dowry. Prince Rue had given so many betrothal gifts to the Shen residents. If one wanted a dowry that was not much different, even if one emptied the entire Mingqi's treasury, there would not be that much. Prince Rue gave the Shen family a difficult problem. At night, Shen Miao sat under the lamp and could not help but want to laugh as she thought of Tai Yi holding a long list of betrothal gifts during the day. Xie Jingxing was really too reckless and actually wrote so many betrothal gifts. Shen Miao face-bombed. If others were to see this list of betrothal gifts, one feared that the Shen family would be envied by everyone in Mingqi. However, this list of betrothal gifts would definitely be found out by others, and it was only a matter of time. It was just that one did not know if Emperor Yonglu knew that Xie Jingxing had written such a long list. Thinking about it, Shen Miao felt somewhat sad. In her previous life when she married Fu Xiuyi did not give such a generous betrothal gift. Not to mention the imperial family, there was not even a betrothal gift from an official's family, and it could only be considered as ordinary. At that time, Fu Xiuyi said that the residence of Prince Ding was poor and he was simple in nature, so he did not want to do it wantonly, thus Shen Miao believed it. Shen Exan and Luo Shuiyan were afraid that she would be wronged and took out more than half of the Shen residence's harvest as her dowry. Those dowry were all given to Fu Xiuyi. If Fu Xiuyi wanted to win over this and that, he would need to use money to buy people's hearts. She meticulously calculated every single cent, and some of the old antiques and paintings in the Shen residence were also taken by her to be exchanged for money. Now thinking about it, after being married to Fu Xiuyi for so many years, it was always her who brought the entire Shen family out, and Fu Xiuyi had never returned anything. Although matters of the heart depended on one's own willingness and did not ask for anything in return, as time passed, one's heart would be bitterly disappointed. Especially after ascending the throne, Fu Xiuyi's generosity towards Mei Furen and Fu Xing was like a slap to her face. Now that she was married to Xie Jingxing, she did not know what kind of feeling she had in her heart. She was moved, but it was not as passionate as in her previous life, like a moth flying into a flame. But Xie Jingxing had given her something that was beyond her imagination. It made people look forward to this marriage. The window was knocked twice. Shen Miao looked up and saw Song Yang pacing outside, so she opened the window. When Song Yang saw her, he first bowed to her and said, "Young foreign, master let this subordinate bring you over." Shen Miao was stunned, but in the blink of an eye she nodded her head, "All right." Coincidentally, she also had something to say to Xie Jingxing. It was different from the first time. This time when Shen Miao came to the residence of Prince Rue, it was considered to be a lot more familiar. It was still Song Yang who carried haystacks everywhere for Shen Miao to climb the walls. He was thinking in his heart that next time he might as well break through all the walls and save the trouble. When Shen Miao arrived at the residence of Prince Rue, when the servants of Prince Rue's residence saw her, they all stopped what they were doing and respectfully greeted her, "Young foreign." "Shen Miao," Song Yang said cheerfully, "Young foreign, everyone likes you very much." Shen Miao only felt somewhat embarrassed, and her heart was filled with mixed feelings. When she was led by Song Yang to the rear courtyard of the residence of Prince Rue, she saw a snow-white furball rushing towards her from afar and happily bit the corner of her clothes. Chapter 8:17. There was a lazy voice that sounded in the night, "Jiao Jiao, come over." Shen Miao looked up and saw Xie Jingxing leaning on the tree with his hands folded across his chest, looking at her with a smile that was not a smile. One did not know who the white tiger at his feet was calling out to. Shen Miao walked towards him and the white tiger happily followed. This white tiger's temperament was one of familiarity. They had only met a few times and Shen Miao had never teased it before, but it actually shook its head and tail affectionately towards her. If one did not know, one would have thought that this white tiger was raised by Shen Miao. She stood beside Xie Jingxing and asked, "Why did you look for me?" Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "To cut clothes." "Cut clothes?" Shen Miao was suspicious, and before she could continue asking, Xie Jingxing suddenly reached out and pulled her into his embrace and gently hugged her before letting go. His movements were too fast, and it was just a short moment from the hug, making Shen Miao hold her breath and did not know what to say. If she were to continue speaking, it would seem like he was haggling over every ounce. If she did not continue, it would indeed be taken advantage of by him. Xie Jingxing said, "With your temper, most likely you will not obediently embroider wedding clothes. I found the best embroiderer in Great Liang but do not know the size of your clothes." He looked at Shen Miao up and down and said meaningfully, "One will know after hugging." Shen Miao said, "Shameless. Shameless." Xie Jingxing slowly said, "But just now you seem to like it very much." Every time this person said 3 sentences, he would be able to anger others to death. Shen Miao sarcastically said, "Your means are really superb. One hug and you know the size. Have you done this many times before?" Xie Jingxing stared at her until Shen Miao's spine went numb before his lips hooked up. "Jealous? Then you can hug it back." He opened his arms and had an appearance of letting her pick. "Who wants to hug you?" Shen Miao despised. "Oh right, I have something to ask you." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. "What is it?" "The list of betrothal gifts has been received. Why did you send so many betrothal gifts?" Shen Miao felt it was funny when she thought about it. Our Shen mansion cannot hold those things. Moreover, you sent so many things and the Shen family cannot afford the same dowry. Are you deliberately looking for trouble? Just this? Xie Jingxing casually said, "I still intend to send more." Shen Miao. Just as she was about to speak, she saw a guard rushing in from the outside. When he saw Xie Jingxing, he revealed a difficult expression and said, "Your Highness, there is someone looking for you outside." This subordinate tried to stop him, but he was like a madman, shouting your name. Afraid that it would cause a misunderstanding, we could only temporarily restrain him. "So?" Xie Jingxing asked. "It is the eldest young master of the Su family, Count of Ping Nan, Su Mingfeng," the guard said. Shen Miao suddenly raised her head. In the front hall of Prince Rui's mansion, there was a young man who was tied up. He was almost tied up like a dumpling and there was a piece of rag in his mouth. He stared angrily at the guards and struggled in vain. This person was Su Mingfeng. Su Mingfeng had already sent people to monitor the residence of Prince Rui for a long time, and even the Shen mansion and the princess residence were also monitored. The longer the investigation, the deeper the suspicions in Su Mingfeng's heart. He suspected that Prince Rui was the dead Xie Jingxing. Even though this conjecture was ridiculous, but as time went by, this idea did not disappear but became more and more ingrained. Xie Jingxing and Shen Miao had some relationship and now Shen Miao was betrothed to Prince Rui. If Xie Jingxing was Prince Rui, then everything would be clear. Su Mingfeng had a kind of obsession with Xie Jingxing that others were unable to understand. After all, that was a childhood playmate that he grew up with. He had learned a lot of things from Xie Jingxing, and Xie Jingxing's significance to him could almost affect his entire life. No matter if Xie Jingxing was Prince Rui or not, Su Mingfeng must personally check. He wanted to sneak into the residence of Prince Rui and see the appearance of Prince Rui when he took off his mask. At that time, the truth would be revealed. This was a crazy move, but Su Mingfeng felt that there was a reason to do it. He was not stupid enough to directly go in himself, but let his own people create a diversion to lure the guards of the residence of Prince Rui, and then he would take advantage of the chaos to sneak in. But Su Mingfeng did not expect that the guards of the residence of Prince Rui were so smart that they caught him in an instant. There was some frustration and more disappointment. At this time, Su Mingfeng was thinking that since he had already been caught, it was not worth it to not recognize the facts. So he struggled with all his might and even reported his background, hoping to attract the attention of Prince Rui. Just as he was thinking, a bearded person dressed like a guard walked in from outside and stopped in front of him. Su Mingfeng's heart could not help but tighten. The bearded person gave a look to the surrounding people and immediately someone came over to untie him and remove the cloth in his mouth. "Master wants to see you. Follow me." Chapter 8:18. Su Mingfeng followed the bearded guard and along the way, The servants of the residence of Prince Rui cast a scrutinizing gaze at him which made Su Mingfeng feel somewhat uncomfortable. But after thinking about it, the matter had already come to this and there was no chance to turn back. Anyway, Prince Rui had already offended, and if it was not true, at most he would apologize. No matter what, in Ming Qi's territory, Prince Rui would give some face to the officials. Su Mingfeng started to feel perturbed again. Prince Rui did not even put Emperor Wen Hui in his eyes, so how would he put a small young master of the Su family in his eyes? Moreover, now that the Su family no longer entered officialdom, to Emperor Wen Hui, there was no place in the residence of Ping Nanbo that was worth putting in an important position. If something really happened, Emperor Wen Hui would not offend Prince Rui for him. Fortunately, there was still a second young master of the Su family, Su Minglang, in the residence of Ping Nanbo. If something really happened to him, the Su family would not have no descendants. But if Prince Rui were to vent his anger on the Su family, what would happen if the entire residence was implicated? Along the way, his imagination ran wild and Su Mingfeng's back gradually broke out in cold sweat. He did not even know that the bearded guard had brought him to the destination. It was until the bearded guard reminded him, "Young Master Su, we have arrived." Su Mingfeng then suddenly recovered to his senses. This was the backyard of the residence of Prince Rui, and there was a pond in the courtyard. In the winter night, the wind from the pond was very cold when it blew on one's body. Vaguely through the lanterns hanging on the branches, one could see a stone table in the garden, and there were two people sitting at the stone table. It seemed to be a male and a female, but one could not see it clearly. Su Mingfeng subconsciously looked at the bearded guard, and the bearded guard said, "His Highness is waiting at the front and will leave first." Finishing, he did not wait for Su Mingfeng's reply and turned to leave. Su Mingfeng looked at the back of the bearded guard and thought that the guards of the residence of Prince Rui were actually so arrogant. It was no wonder that Prince Rui had that kind of conduct. What kind of master would have what kind of subordinates? Since Prince Rui was not respectful to Emperor Wen Hui, the guards of the residence of Prince Rui were also not respectful to the guests. Thinking about it, it seemed that only the little marquis of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and Xie Jingxing would act so unscrupulously in the Ding capital. Thinking of Xie Jingxing, Su Mingfeng's heart jumped again. He looked at the two people in front of the stone table and paused for a moment before finally striding towards those two people. When he got closer, he then discovered that there was a furry white animal lying under the table. Initially, when Su Mingfeng saw that figure, he thought that it was a cat, but when that little cat-like thing heard his movements, it turned its head and roared out, revealing its sharp white teeth. It was a tiger. Su Mingfeng thought that there was actually a tiger raised in the residence of Prince Rui. Even though it was a little tiger, this Prince Rui was really special. Thinking of this, he felt that Prince Rui and Xie Jingxing were not very similar. Su Mingfeng walked to the front of the stone table and Prince Rui's back was facing him, so the first thing that Su Mingfeng saw was the female seated. That female had delicate features and was graceful and dignified. When the familiar gaze looked over, Su Mingfeng cried out involuntarily, "Shen young lady." It was actually Shen Miao. "Shen young lady, why are you here?" Su Mingfeng could not help but ask. "Young Master Su is really meddling too much." A casual voice sounded and there seemed to be a touch of displeasure. "This Princess Wang Fei is in one's residence. What is wrong?" The 4 words "one's residence" almost made Shen Miao unable to continue drinking her tea. She smiled at Su Mingfeng and nodded her head. "Gentleman Su." Su Mingfeng's gaze then landed on Prince Rui, who had his back facing him. He was doing it lazily, but his posture was unexpectedly tall and slender. With the weak light from the lantern, one could see the fine golden thread that outlined the smooth lines on his collar. Chapter 8:19. "Your Highness Prince Rui," Su Mingfeng said. Prince Rui did not speak and Su Mingfeng composed himself. With Shen Miao here, his heart was not afraid. Thinking about it, he almost forgot that Shen Miao was now considered as Rui Wang Fei, and from what he saw, Shen Miao's relationship with Prince Rui was not bad. If Prince Rui really had the intention to kill him, Shen Miao would not sit idly by on account of Xie Jingxing. Even though it was somewhat strange to think about it, Su Mingfeng still plucked up his courage and asked, Today Ming Feng came over to inquire about a matter. Speak. The more simple Prince Rui said, the more Su Mingfeng's heart was in a mess. He said, Your Highness Prince Rui is very similar to an old friend of Ming Feng, but that old friend had disappeared for many years. Ming Feng boldly. He made up his mind and said, Ming Feng boldly pleads Your Highness to take off the mask and let Ming Feng resolve the doubts in my heart. Finishing this sentence, Su Mingfeng lowered his head and waited anxiously for the other party's reply. After a moment of silence, there was a voice that rang. It was still a faint voice that did not seem to care. It was low and deep and pleasant to listen to, but every word was like 1,000 caddies that smashed into Su Mingfeng's ears. Prince Rui asked, The old friend that you mentioned, is it called Xie Jingxing? Su Mingfeng's heart moved and there was a burst of ecstasy in his heart, but he forced himself to calm down in a blink of an eye. Prince Rui had stayed in Mingqi for a few months and Xie Jingxing's name was not small and could be considered as a hero in Mingqi. He and Xie Jingxing were childhood friends and perhaps someone had told Prince Rui about this matter. He said, Yes. Xie Jingxing is dead. There was no joy or anger in Prince Rui's voice. You said that he disappeared? Everyone said that he died in the northern Jiang and I have seen the corpse with my own eyes. Su Mingfeng smiled bitterly, but I am not willing to believe it. Now that His Highness has appeared, Mingfeng knew that this condition of his was rude and unreasonable, but there are always some things in this world that one must do their best to complete. Facing Prince Rui, Su Mingfeng did not hide anything. He looked at Prince Rui's appearance and it seemed that he was not a person who pestered endlessly and seemed to be somewhat reasonable. Perhaps she would be moved by his words and treat him especially kindly. The white tiger on the ground gave a low whimper and Prince Rui stood up from the stone bench. He turned around, and half of his mask glowed coldly in the wind. Su Mingfeng then discovered that Prince Rui was actually half a head taller than him when he stood up. Xie Jingxing was half a head taller than him. At that time, he was a young man dressed in fresh clothes and loved to compete with one another. Su Mingfeng had begged Su Foreign to fill half a bowl of rice for him every day, hoping that he could be better than Xie Jingxing. At that time Xie Jingxing was still rather contemptuous and said, You want to become the second Su Minglang? Time passed in a trance. It seemed as if nothing had changed. However, the blue seas turned into mulberry fields. In the end, everything was over. Shen Miao wanted to speak but stopped. Prince Rui said, You want to see this prince's face? Su Mingfeng nodded his head. Prince Rui stretched out his hand to cover the silver mask and slowly took it off. His eyebrows were slanted to the temples, his peach blossom eyes were filled with affection, his nose was sharp, and the lazy smile on his lips was almost the same as yesterday. His appearance had changed slightly, from a beautiful and mischievous youth to a mature, devilishly handsome young man. But at the end it was still him. Xie Jingxing's lips curled up as he smiled and said in a disdainful tone, Stunned from looking? Su Mingfeng suddenly felt that his eyes were a little sour. He went forward and suddenly punched Xie Jingxing's shoulder, just like what they often did in the past. His mouth scolded, Scoundrel! Always deceiving the heavens and even deceiving me. There is no loyalty. Chapter 8:20. Shen Miao could not hide the astonishment in her heart. She really did not think that Xie Jingxing would so easily take off his mask in front of Su Mingfeng and admit his identity. Just like in the past in front of Princess Rong Exin. Even if it was one's loved ones, good friends or best friends, when faced with a sudden change in identity, there would not be any understanding. The more precious the feelings, the more one should not easily test it, because if the result of the test was not something that one could bear, it would be a kind of deep and indelible torture to oneself. If it was Shen Miao herself, perhaps she would not be so straightforward. After all, she did not dare and did not have the courage to accept an unknown result. On this point, she was not as decisive as Xie Jingxing. He was indeed very clear about what she wanted and what she did not want. He forced himself and did not even give himself a chance to hesitate. How did you become Prince Rui? Su Mingfeng patted his chest. Just now I was still thinking that if Prince Rui had the intention to kill me, one would only lose one's life here. He said, Now at least one's life is spared. But his tone was filled with uncontrollable excitement. Xie Jingxing looked at him and said, "After 2 years of not seeing you, you have become more and more stupid." Su Mingfeng waved his hands. "I knew that you did not die. A scourge lasts for 1,000 years. A person like you should live for 8 to 10,000 years. He sighed again. "If it was not that Princess Rong Exen came to look for me that day and I saw the tiger head bracelet on young Lady Shin's hands, one fear that you would still be kept in the dark. You do not intend to see me anymore?" He said angrily with some anger from not being trusted. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders. "Exactly." Su Mingfeng was flustered, but he was often bullied by Xie Jingxing in the past, so he was not angry at this moment. He only said with some doubts, "It seems that young Lady Shen had long known of your identity." He smiled and looked at Shen Miao before saying meaningfully, "At the beginning I felt that something was not right. Now it can be considered that you have gotten what you wished for and have hidden very deeply." "Shen Miao, what exactly do you want to say?" Xie Jingxing said impatiently, "I still have things to say to your sister-in-law." Shen Miao and Su Mingfeng were shocked by the word sister-in-law at the same time. Su Mingfeng looked at Shen Miao and said, "Since you are still alive, why did you not tell me about it for these 2 years? Moreover, it seems that Princess Rong Xin is suspicious of your identity. Why did you not take the initiative to tell her and also your father?" Su Mingfeng. Xie Jingxing interrupted his words, "I am Prince Rui of the Great Liang." The courtyard fell silent. Shen Miao sighed slightly in her heart. One would have to come to this step. With Xie Jingxing's identity, it was destined that no one would stand on his side in the Ding capital. No matter who it was, when they saw Xie Jingxing's true identity, they would always think of the name of treason. No matter what the truth or difficulties were, no one cared. All they cared about was results and deception. Princess Rong Exen loved Xie Jingxing like her own son, but at the end she could not avoid being on guard and deceived. When Su Mingfeng saw that his old friend was reborn, he was naturally wild with joy, but after a short period of joy, the truth would eventually be revealed. That was when human nature was the most naked, the most cruel, and the most painful. Su Mingfeng looked at Xie Jingxing in puzzlement and asked, "What are you talking about?" "Oh yes, you have now become Prince Rui. Was it that something happened at the northern Jiang battlefield and you had no choice but to do it? This Prince Rui's identity is indeed noble, but it is not a solution in the long run. You have to. I am Prince Rui of the Great Liang," Xie Jingxing said. The chattering stopped abruptly. Chapter 821. The wind blew up the fallen leaves in the courtyard. The white tiger had already curled up in the shack that was built for it to rest. In the starless and moonless night, there was only a faint light from the lantern. Su Mingfeng's gaze was uncertain as he asked hesitantly, "What is the meaning of this?" "My real identity is the Great Liang's Prince Rui, not the son of the residents of the Marquis of Lin and Xie Ding." Xie Jingxing lightly said, "It is not a stopgap measure." "Impossible!" Su Mingfeng blurted out, "You and I have known each other for more than 10 years and were together since childhood. How can I not know that you are the Great Liang's Prince Rui? The heir of the Xie family died at birth, and the real heir of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and is already dead." Xie Jingxing said, "It is not me." Su Mingfeng looked at Xie Jingxing in a daze. His words were somewhat chaotic, as if he himself was unable to differentiate some things. "Your meaning is that from the beginning you are not the son of the Marquis of Lin and someone swapped the crown prince with you and you have been living in the Ding capital till now, but you are actually not a Mingqi person. You are a Great Liang person and you are the Great Liang's Emperor Yong Li's younger brother. You are a prince of the Great Liang. How is this possible? This is simply impossible." His words suddenly paused when he saw Xie Jingxing's expression. That familiar, handsome face only had a look of indifference. Su Mingfeng understood Xie Jingxing. When Xie Jingxing was talking about serious matters, he did not like to repeat it, and when he was impatient, he would often have this expression. What he said was true. Su Mingfeng could not say what kind of feeling he had in his heart at this moment, as if it was blocked by a ball of cotton. The joy of seeing an old friend for the first time had completely disappeared. What was left was only emptiness and some inexplicable anger. He asked, "When did you know your identity?" "From memory." Xie Jingxing answered. Su Mingfeng took 2 steps back. "From memory?" he asked. "You knew that you are a great Liang person long ago?" Xie Jingxing was non-committal. Shen Miao sighed in her heart. Why did Xie Jingxing need to be so honest? In fact, the more he said, the more Su Mingfeng felt that he was being cheated. Sometimes, it was easier for oneself and others to accept some lies. But Shen Miao asked herself honestly, if it was her, she would also be as honest as Xie Jingxing. There was no need to lie to people who were very close to him. Sure enough, it was just as Shen Miao expected. After Su Mingfeng heard Xie Jingxing's answer, his expression became extremely complicated. After the surprise and suspicion, it was like the anger of being betrayed gradually surged up. He sneered and asked back, "Oh, then why did you come back now? Could it be that you see that Ming Qi is not as good as your great Liang and still want to have an ambitious foot in here?" His words were so harsh that even Shen Miao could not help but cast a sidelong glance. But one's heart was clear that when an outsider looked at a chess game, one would be able to see it clearly. Su Mingfeng suddenly knew so many secrets and would definitely not be able to accept it. Towards the people who were close to one's side, people would always hurt them easily. So what if I am? But Xie Jingxing was not one to be humble. Not only did he not stroke Su Mingfeng's hair, he even calmly admitted it. Shen Miao wanted to speak, but after thinking about it, she gave up. A true gentleman did not speak when watching a chess game. Today she would just treat it as watching a show. Su Mingfeng was indeed angrier as he roared at Xie Jingxing. "Today I finally know what is called a traitor and what is called a white-eyed wolf that cannot be tamed. Originally I thought that you were not close to the Marquis of Lin and since young because of Princess Yuqing. But now it seems that it was you who wanted to draw a clear line with them. You are not the son of the Marquis of Lin, but you enjoy everything in the residence of the Marquis of Lin and with a clear conscience. Even the 2 Shu sons of the Xie residence are not as good as you. You keep saying that Princess Rong Xan is your relative, but you deceived her and made her feel pain every day because of the news of your death. You treat me as a brother but concealed your identity for so many years. One fear that there is a reason for you to be on good terms with me." Chapter 8:22. You do not like Ming Qi and do not like the Ding capital. But that is after all the place that raised you. The grace of birth is not as great as the grace of upbringing. You enjoyed everything that Ming Qi gave you but turned back to take drastic measures to be the Prince Rue of your great Liang. Your great Liang is rich and the people are strong. Your great Liang army is strong, but you abandoned everything in Ming Qi for glory and splendor. Xie Jingxing, you are heartless and you are a vile person. You are not worthy to be an official, not worthy to be a Di's son, and not worthy to be a brother. Scram back to your great Liang." "Enough." Shen Miao suddenly stood up and interrupted Su Mingfeng's words. Su Mingfeng's words were just too hurtful. She turned her head to look at Xie Jingxing. Without the mask on his face, Xie Jingxing's expression could be seen clearly. He was not angry and did not smile. He only calmly looked at Su Mingfeng. It was as if the person that Su Mingfeng was talking about was not him, and it was also as if he did not care about Su Mingfeng's words. Shen Miao's heart suddenly had a few waves. She looked at Su Mingfeng and a ridiculing smile floated on her face. "Oh?" Young Master Su seemed to be filled with righteousness and couldn't wait to uphold justice. "Unfortunately, your so-called white-eyed wolf, in my view, you are also the same." Xie Jingxing was startled. Su Mingfeng was also angry with Shen Miao. "What did you say?" "Say that you are a white-eyed wolf." In Shen Miao's previous life, when she was fighting with Mei Furen in the inner palace, naturally there was no lack of verbal sparring every day. In terms of ridiculing people, even though she was not outstanding, she had learned a lot of things from Mei Furen. She smiled gently and was dignified and steady. The more it was like this, the more it set off Su Mingfeng's rudeness. Her voice was gentle like the wind and drizzle, but every word and sentence were merciless. "Before accusing others, it is best to look at yourself first. Gentleman Su feel that Prince Rui is a white-eyed wolf and that Prince Rui is using you. I would also like to ask Gentleman Su, in the beginning in the residence of the Count of Pingnan, how much did Xie Jingxing help you? Ever since you entered officialdom, you did not know how to socialize and socialize. It was Xie Jingxing who paid for you, and when you wanted to learn martial arts, Xie Jingxing helped you hire a martial arts master. When His Majesty wanted to suppress Pingnan Bo Fu, it was he who reminded you, advising Pingnan Bo to retreat. If it was not so, do you think that there is still a residence of Pingnan Bo in Mingqi's Ding capital? I'm afraid the grass on his grave is already 10 feet high. You said that Xie Jingxing used you and befriended you for other purposes? In the entire Ding capital, who does not know that you, Su Mingfeng, are Xie Jingxing's childhood friend? Ever since you were young, your body was weak, but no one dared to bully you. Who do you think you are? Is it because of the reputation of the Pingnan Count residence? Or is it because you have a childhood sweetheart that no one in the Ding capital dares to provoke? The matters of the world are just that simple. Young Master Su, don't think that my words are not pleasant to hear. Since young, how many roads did Xie Jingxing pave for you, and how many times did he help your Su family? If this is the so-called use, then I also hope that someone can use me? Young Master Su, don't you agree? She was full of smiles, but the words that she said were like rain hitting banana leaves, dripping with coldness. After taking other people's benefits, one would turn around and hit them back and keep on accusing others. If this is not an ingrate, then what is? Young Master Su, can I also say that you are heartless and unworthy to be a brother? Enjoying everything that the person that you accuse gives you with a clear conscience, do you not feel guilty? Su Mingfeng was not a person who would engage in a battle of words with a female, not to mention that Shen Miao's words were full of ridicule, but it was genuine, causing his face to swell to a purplish-red color. In his extreme anger, along with Shen Miao's words, his mind started to recall the scrolls of images. Chapter 8:23. In all fairness, Xie Jingxing's treatment towards him was indeed very good. If it was not good, Su Mingfeng would not have kept thinking about it for so many years. Xie Jingxing was an arrogant and rude person, unbridled and stubborn. He did things as he pleased, and there was almost nothing that could restrain him. Even though he said that he was ruthless, he would always help out with Su Mingfeng's matters. For example, when someone bullied Su Mingfeng when he was young, Xie Jingxing did not say anything and brought people to beat him up. Even if that person was a child of the imperial family, he still beat him up, and finally others did not dare to bully Su Mingfeng. It was just that even though Xie Jingxing did a lot of things, he never took credit for it and did not even mention it. His younger sister always had a bad attitude, so as time passed, people remembered his bad points, but his good points were gradually forgotten. When Shen Miao finished speaking, her heart was extremely carefree. She did not know why, but when she saw Su Mingfeng criticizing Xie Jingxing, she felt that the scene was very dazzling. Now that she had finished speaking, even though she was somewhat ashamed, she did not regret it. Did Xie Jingxing have any intention to make use of Su Mingfeng? Shen Miao thought that it was definitely not. Otherwise, in the previous lifetime when Emperor Wen Hui ordered the Su family to be exterminated, no one would collect the corpses of Su Yu and his son. Everyone was afraid of Emperor Wen Hui's anger and suspicions. Only Xie Jingxing stood out and buried them. Even at that time, Xie Jingxing was carrying Xie Ding's death in battle. The residence of the Marquis of Lin and was in imminent danger, and he himself was about to receive orders to go into battle. Loyal, a true hero, and follow one's heartbeat. That was Fu Ming's evaluation of Xie Jingxing. What the child's eyes saw was the truest things. Shen Miao thought that what Fu Ming said was as such. If this kind of person was scolded by Su Mingfeng as not worthy to be a brother, Shen Miao would feel that it was not worth it for Xie Jingxing. An identity was enough to change everyone's eyes. The title of Prince Rui was glorious, but in fact the things that one had to bear, how many people would not have a change of expression and accept it while talking and laughing? She did not discover that when she was speaking, after Xie Jingxing was slightly surprised, his gaze landed on her and he had a joyful smile. Su Mingfeng looked at Xie Jingxing and was unable to speak. His emotions were complicated and sad. His good friend was still alive, and that was something that should have been enough to make him happy. But for some reason he was not in the mood to be happy at all. Xie Jingxing glanced at him and said, "I do not owe you anything. Even if I do, I've already paid it off." Xie Jingxing said, "The residence of the Marquis of Lin and is a big tree that attracts the wind, thus the emperor has the intention to suppress it. The Xie family's army under the Marquis of Lin and is millions, and if the father is compassionate and the son is filial, the son inherits the father's business. The emperor would not be able to sleep well. The closer one walks, the faster one dies. I still want to live for a few more years, so I will help the Marquis of Lin and to protect a Marquis residence." The grace of raising in exchange for the stability of the Marquis residence, is it worth it? Xie Jingxing's lips curled up as he asked. Su Mingfeng was speechless from the question. If I did not do this, Xie Ding was originally a thorn in the emperor's eyes and would die one day. The residence of the Marquis of Lin and would be charged with a groundless crime and be splashed with dirty water. Even though the son was dead and there was no more descendants, at least the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was still there, so the emperor let the residence of the Marquis of Lin off. Speaking of the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and it is still a clean and bright house. Xie Jingxing ridiculed, "There is always a mother and son relationship with Princess Yuqing. For this little bit of relationship, the only thing that can be done is to protect the dignity of the Marquis of Lin and the dignity of the residence of the Marquis of Lin." And Shen Miao looked at Xie Jingxing's handsome face. He said it carelessly, as if all these were not important at all. But in the past years, these unspoken words could only be placed in the heart. Xie Jingxing was an honest person, but he was also the most dishonest person. He honestly stated the truth and the course of events, but what was not honest was his own heart. He did not mention the grievances that he had suffered and did not mention his worries and depression. Thus, in everyone's eyes, he was a game of life and was cynical. It seemed that there was nothing in the world that could stump him. However, when he was arranging everything in order to maintain the clarity of the Marquis residence, he was forced to bear the name of disobedience, presumptuous, no respect for elders, and no respect for one's father and elder brothers. Su Mingfeng was stunned when he heard it. "My life in the Great Liang is not as simple as what you think." He looked at the icicles on the tree and casually said, "If it was you, you would not be able to stay for a day before coming back crying to look for mother." Su Mingfeng was so angry that his throat was stuck. There are no benefits in the world for no reason. One must fight for what one has obtained. Su Mingfeng, your days are comfortable and you cannot use this kind of comfort to guess me. What I have experienced is more than what you can imagine. He sighed softly, but there was still a smile on his face. That pair of peach blossom eyes were slightly curved and the eyelashes were hanging down to a nice arc. From this angle, his brows were gentle and he was so beautiful that it was as if he had walked out from a painting. However, there was not a bit of a smile in that pair of eyes. It was bitingly cold like the winter wind. "The most important thing is that Ming Qi did not nurture me and only erase me," he said. Chapter 824. Su Mingfeng staggered away. When he left, it was as if he had experienced a huge change and was almost out of his wits. Shen Miao wanted to say a few words to Xie Jingxing, but Xie Jingxing returned to his casual look and smiled as he urged her to return to the residence to rest, as if he did not want to mention the matter again. Shen Miao was helpless and could only follow his intentions. Some people liked to share their own painful experiences with others to gain the sympathy of others. However, the things that really made one sad were not willing to share it. Recalling it once was like stabbing a knife into one's heart. Xie Jingxing most likely did not like to expose his weakness in front of others, so in the eyes of outsiders, he was still powerful and omnipotent. But Shen Miao was able to hear something from his sentence. "The most important thing is that Ming Qi did not nurture me and only erase me." Until they returned to the Shen mansion, Shen Miao's heart was thinking about this matter. What was the meaning of Ming Qi only erasing Xie Jingxing? What floated in Shen Miao's mind was the matters of the past lifetime. In the past lifetime, the residence of the Marquis of Lin and finally collapsed and both Xie Ding and Xie Jingxing died in battle. The remaining Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu were promoted and Madame Fang's status also rose. In this lifetime, even though the 3 sons of the Xie family were gone, at least Xie Ding was still around. As long as Xie Ding was still around, the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was not considered to have collapsed. If Xie Ding had the heart to remarry, at this age, it was possible to have another son. Even though it looked miserable, but as compared to the past lifetime, it was much better. What was the difference between this lifetime and the past lifetime? It seemed to have started from 2 years ago. In the past lifetime, Xie Jingxing did not go to the northern Jiang 2 years ago but a few years later. The time was brought forward and it seemed to have caused some things to change. So what was it that caused Xie Jingxing to make this decision? Was it because of herself? Shen Miao pondered. But what did Ming Qi push for? In the past lifetime, when Shen Miao knew about the matters of the Xie family, she sighed and lamented. She had once suspected that the imperial family was involved in the matter but was not willing to delve into it. Other than being a scoundrel, the Xie father and son were not loyal to the Ming Qi. If it was because of guarding against the overshadowing of the Lord, then the imperial family would be too heartless. But now, this conjecture resurfaced in his mind. Assuming that the imperial family targeted the residence of the Marquis of Lin and right from the start, the Xie father and son would die in battle and the residence of the Marquis of Lin and would be burnt to ashes. This was the ending that the imperial family had prepared for the Xie family. Then because Xie Jingxing took the initiative to request to go out to battle, the royal family's plan was brought forward. The imperial family fulfilled their wish of letting Xie Jingxing die in battle, but at this time Xie Ding was still alive. Not only that, Xie Ding still had 2 sons, so the imperial family's ambition towards the residence of the Marquis of Lin and had not disappeared. Fortunately Xie Ding was unable to recover after Xie Jingxing's death. Thus the plan, to completely destroy the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was not urgent. 2 years later, the 2 sons of the Xie family died in an accident. From then on, Xie Ding had no chance of making a comeback. There was no harm in keeping him alive. The royal family changed their previous plan and even took the initiative to appease him. This was to show the royal family's benevolence and sympathy for their subjects. If one were to say that Xie Jingxing had already expected everything that would happen in the future, then the expedition 2 years ago was not done recklessly. Just like what he said to Su Mingfeng, this was the only way to protect the residence of the Marquis of Lin. But these were all Shen Miao's own thoughts and no one knew what the truth was. She was thinking that she should find an opportunity to ask Xie Jingxing. In the past lifetime she did not want to delve into it, but in this lifetime, she was very curious. Chapter 825. This night, Shen Miao's thoughts were heavy and Su Mingfeng was suffering. Naturally there were others who were not in the mood to sleep. In the residence of Prince Ding, it was brightly lit throughout the night. Fu Xiuyi sat on the high seat and looked at the subordinate who came to report and slowly asked, "Su Mingfeng went to the residence of Prince Rui?" The subordinate said, "Exactly." After coming out, the air of the Count of Pingnan seemed to be stimulated and was in a daze. Fu Xiuyi waved his hands and the subordinate withdrew. The advisor by his side came forward and asked, "The heir of the Count of Pingnan went to the residence of Prince Rui in the middle of the night. Could it be that he had a private relationship with Prince Rui?" The residence of the Count of Pingnan was no longer in officialdom. If Prince Rui really wanted to find someone to cooperate with, he would not be able to find him. Fu Xiuyi's gaze turned cold. The Su family was originally an excellent chess piece. If it was not for Su Mingfeng's sudden serious illness and the Su family gradually withdrew from the officialdom, it would not be to this extent. However, he said, the Su family was considered lucky to escape a calamity. The advisor said, "Speaking of which, the illness of the heir of the Count of Pingnan was really strange. Because the heir of the Count of Pingnan was ill, the Count of Pingnan resigned and now gradually retired. There was almost no news of them in the Ding capital." Fu Xiuyi laughed. "Could it be that you think that Su Mingfeng was really ill?" "Seeking your highness' guidance. Su Mingfeng and the residents of the Marquis of Lin and Xie Jingxing are close friends." Fu Xiuyi said, "It was strange that the Su family suddenly withdrew from the officialdom. Especially Su Mingfeng. At that time he was flourishing but suddenly fell seriously ill and did not even fight for it and directly resigned. He said that he would not live for more than a few years. You see, 2 years have passed and is not Su Mingfeng still living well? The residents of the Count of Pingnan was clearly putting their own interests first and retreating bravely. Naturally there was someone reminding them. The residents of the Count of Pingnan and the residents of the Marquis of Lin and have always been on good terms. Other than the reminders of close friends, others would not meddle in other people's business. But, the advisor asked in puzzlement, the residents of the Marquis of Lin and Xie Ding, why was it Xie Jingxing who reminded them and not Xie Ding? Xie Ding cannot even protect himself. Fu Xiuyi drank a mouthful of tea. Xie Ding is arrogant and arrogant. Relying on his outstanding military achievements, he repeatedly acted presumptuously in front of Imperial Father. Imperial Father had long had the intention to get rid of him. If Xie Ding was smarter, he would restrain himself, but you see, when did he restrain himself in the Ding capital? But this Xie Jingxing, Fu Xiuyi narrowed his eyes, cannot be underestimated. Isn't Xie Jingxing also unbridled and arrogant in his actions? The advisor said, in the Ding capital, when mentioning little Xie Marquis, everyone would know that he is a stubborn and bold person. That's right, but don't forget one point, Fu Xiuyi replied. From the beginning to the end, he did not enter officialdom. Everyone said that Xie Jingxing did not enter officialdom because of Xie Ding and deliberately delayed his life, but I think that is not the case. That time at the Chrysanthemum banquet, Xie Jingxing alone dealt with his 2 Shu younger brothers, and the military strategy that he displayed was admirable. He had unparalleled talent, but he was unwilling to display it. What was this called? This is called concealing one's abilities. How many years has Xie Ding lived and how many years has Xie Jingxing lived? Xie Ding had lived to such an old age, but would still be blinded by the riches and honor of the residents of the Marquis of Lin, and Xie Jingxing was so young but was able to clearly assess the situation. Xie Jingxing was the most terrifying person in the residence of the Marquis of Lin. So the person who reminded the Su family was not Xie Ding but Xie Jingxing. Only Xie Jingxing. The advisor looked at Fu Xiuyi. Is your highness overestimating Xie Jingxing? Even if he reminded the Su family, it would not prove anything. Cannot prove what? Fu Xiuyi looked at him and asked back, then how about adding the Xie family's army? Xie family's army? The advisor was puzzled and immediately thought of something before looking at Fu Xiuyi in shock. Your highness's meaning is... Chapter 8:26. In short, the most terrifying person in the residence of the Marquis of Lin and is not Xie Ding but Xie Jingxing, Fu Xiuyi said. When this person was still young, he already had enough ambition and brains. If he is given a certain amount of power, one fear that there would be a change in the Ding capital. With him around, this bone of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and will never be bitten off. Fortunately, Xie Jingxing is already dead. When the advisor heard Fu Xiuyi's words, he heaved a sigh of relief with lingering fear. The current residents of the Marquis of Lin and would not be able to create any waves. That's right. Fu Xiuyi said, for dangerous enemies, it is always necessary to kill them before they grow up. However, he changed the topic. What I am curious about now is why would Su Mingfeng and Prince Rui mix together? Not only that. The advisor continued his words. Princess Rong Xan also seemed to be investigating Prince Rui. Su Mingfeng's people even went to the Shen mansion to guard, as if they were monitoring 5th Shen young ladies' every move. Princess Rong Xan is also the same. Su Mingfeng, Prince Rui, Princess Rong Xan and Shen Miao. Fu Xiuyi said, these few people must have a special relationship. Especially Shen Miao and Prince Rui, now they were betrothed by Imperial Father. I know Imperial Father's temperament very well. Once he has set his sights on something, he will not hand it over to others. The Shen family is already in Imperial Father's pocket and Shen Miao's marriage will not be given to outsiders. How would he bestow her to Prince Rui as a Wangfei without rhyme or reason? No matter how one looks at it, it is not a good deal for Ming Qi. Your Highness means... The advisor muttered. This marriage must have been initiated by Prince Rui. Not only that, Prince Rui must have used some method to force Imperial Father to make this decision. Fu Xiaoyi suddenly smiled strangely. Don't you find it strange? Previously I suspected that Prince Rui and Shen Miao seemed to have an unusual relationship but felt that Prince Rui was not one who would change the plans of the world for a woman. But now it seems that I was wrong. Prince Rui indeed had other thoughts towards Shen Miao. That's why he racked his brains to get an imperial edict. Nothing happens for no reason in this world. Su Mingfeng and Princess Rong Xian had never left the Ding capital before, so it was impossible for them to know Prince Rui. But their attitude towards Prince Rui seemed to be somewhat familiar. Also, Prince Rui and Shen Miao had only met a few times, so why would he do this for her? Could it be that Prince Rui had come to Mingqi before? The advisor turned pale with fright. Your Highness's meaning is that Prince Rui had been to the Ding capital before? You've seen them before, and you're even friends with them? Of course I can't do it openly. Fu Xiaoyi smiled. Perhaps we were deceived in the beginning, or perhaps Prince Rui was living in the Ding capital with the identity of a Mingqi person. Otherwise, why would he wear a mask this time? One heard that everyone in the imperial family of the Great Liang are astonishingly beautiful, so why does Prince Rui dare not show his true face to others? I think his face must have been recognized by us. The advisor was silent. He seemed to be shocked by the news and could not speak. Fu Xiaoyi smiled again. But these are just my own guesses. I can't be sure now. There is no harm. I have already sent people to continue guarding. It is just that now one is looking forward to Prince Rui's secret. He paused for a moment and suddenly thought of something before asking, how is Pei Lang now? The advisor was startled and recalled for a moment before saying, he still refuses to let it go. Fu Xiaoyi smiled. Continue. Just do not let him die. He continued, these people that the Shen family found, each and every one of their bones are really hard. It makes one envious. Chapter 827. The advisor's entire body turned cold when he heard it but did not dare to say anything more and respectfully retreated. Another few days passed by. The Shen family finally accepted the fact that Shen Miao is about to marry Prince Rui. Since the marriage had been set, the marriage invitation was sent and the list of betrothal gifts was also given. The female side would have to show a little importance to this marriage. Even though Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not approve of Shen Miao's marriage to Prince Rui, but if one did not prepare well, others would think that they did not value Shen Miao. Fighting with his last breath, Shen Xian was not willing to let others look down on his daughter. It was just that the list of betrothal gifts that Prince Rui sent over was really shocking, so the amount of dowry to prepare became a problem. Both Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan were military officers and had outstanding military merits in the early years, thus they received a lot of rewards. Both of them were not in the Ding capital all year round, and other than the portion that was given to old Shenfuren, there was almost no movement. There were only 2 children in the residence and Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not favor anyone, so everyone split it in half. Actually, it was considered extravagant. But in the 2 years in the Shaochun city, they had invested a lot of money into the Luo family's army, thus the Shen family's wealth was not as solid as before. The only thing to blame was the list of betrothal gifts that Prince Rui sent over. Even during the Shen family's heyday, it was hard to catch up to it. Previously Shen Qiu still thought that Prince Rui was bragging because this list of betrothal gifts was enough for an official to marry 10 daughters-in-law from a noble family. Perhaps Prince Rui was joking with the Shen family, but on the second day Tai Yi received Prince Rui's orders to send 2 golden geese, which almost made Shen Qiu stagger in shock. That was something that the Empress Dowager wanted to treasure. Thus Prince Rui used it as a prize for the betrothal gifts and casually found a box and sent it over. From then on, everyone believed that the Great Liang was really rich and Prince Rui really squandered money like dirt. This list of betrothal gifts was not a joke. Shen Miao's dowry, this matter was big. Shen Qiu took the initiative to give Shen Miao the money that he was saving for his wife's marriage. One must not be short of ambition when one is poor. How can one let younger sister's dowry be less than half of Prince Rui's betrothal gifts? If this was to be brought to the Great Liang, one would be looked down upon by others. Our Shen family's young ladies must do their best. Prince Rue giving betrothal gifts like this and our dowry is small, will he look down on us? He couldn't be careless about the dowry. I still have some antiques in my house that I can pawn. Although we are poor, we can't lose face. Shen Xian deeply agreed. Shen Miao. In any case, the Shen family was considered as one of the largest families in the Ding capital. Why was it that in Shen Qiu's mouth, it seemed that they were destitute and had to sell the furnishings in the house to gather the dowry? If word of this got out, wouldn't they be laughing their heads off? Because it was the end of the year, the big and small matters in the Ding capital were much more relaxed, and Shen Miao's marriage was personally decreed by Emperor Wenhui. Perhaps it was because he knew that the Shen family was dissatisfied with this marriage. Emperor Wenhui specially gave Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan a period of leave to accompany Shen Miao and return after Shen Miao's marriage was over. Even if Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not have the emperor's approval, their thoughts were all on Shen Miao, so naturally they were happy and relaxed. Shen Qiu and Luo Ling were in the military ministry and had basically done almost the same at the end of the year. These days, they were either accompanying Luo Shuiyan to buy New Year's goods or helping Shen Miao. The whole family were chatting in the hall and the cook had made some new snacks and the charcoal fire in the room was burning brightly. Luo Tan smiled as she looked at Shen Miao. Youngest Biao sister, you will be getting married after the end of the year. Even though it is too late to sow the dowry now, but you have to prepare for yourself. Tomorrow let the embroidery maids in the pavilion come over to measure your figure and after the measurements are done, the horses will be whipped so that the clothes will be ready. Chapter 828. When Ming Qi's females got married, they would need to embroider their own wedding dress. Generally speaking, those who were engaged early would start to embroider for themselves a few years ago. Those who were engaged later would let the tailor make the wedding dress and they would symbolically embroider a few designs, which was considered to be done by themselves. Only then would there be a harmonious and beautiful meaning. Originally Shen Miao's marriage was not urgent in the Shen family and after the end of the year, they would start to look for suitable young talents and at that time Shen Miao would start to embroider her own wedding dress. Who knew that with Emperor Wenhui's imperial edict, everything was messed up. Now it was impossible for Shen Miao to personally embroider a wedding dress, thus it was necessary to implement these early. Luo Shuiyan patted her head and said in annoyance, "These days I almost forgot about this matter. Tanner is right. Jiao Jiao's wedding dress needs to be prepared. I'm not very familiar with the Ding capital's embroidery lady. Later I will ask my good foreign. She knows the best where the clothes and jewelry are. Jiao Jiao's wedding dress must not be sloppy." Finishing, she sized up Shen Miao and smiled. Jiao Jiao's figure is slender and would look good in the wedding dress. When Shen Miao heard that, her mind was filled with the words you will know after a hug, that day when Xie Jingxing pulled her into his embrace. She could not help but feel that her face was somewhat hot. Shen Qiu asked, "Younger sister, why is your face so red? Do you need to call a physician over to take a look?" Luo Ling's eyes dimmed and he lowered his head and did not make a sound. Luo Tan was giggling with Luo Shuiyan about the wedding dress embroidered patterns when she saw a servant outside rushing in. "Fern Master, there is someone outside seeking an audience." "Did not it was said that there will not be any guests these few days and the doors will be closed?" Shen Xian said unhappily, "Why was it not stopped?" He wanted to enjoy the few remaining family time so he did not meet anyone who came to the Shen mansion. The servant was almost crying, It is His Highness Prince Rue of the Great Liang." Luo Tan's eyes widened. Shen Qiu stood up with a whoosh and asked with a murderous look, "What is he here for?" The servant said, This one did not ask. Before his voice landed, one heard a low and sweet voice from behind the servant. "A wedding dress." A tall and straight figure walked out from behind the servant. The servants in the Shen mansion did not have delicate features, but each and every one of them were upright and awe-inspiring. After mixing with Shen Qiu for a long time, there was some valiant air about them. However, when compared to the person behind him, he immediately looked a little dispirited. His purple gold robe fluttered in the wind. His smile carried a bit of contempt, but it did not make people feel disgusted. It seemed to be a bit cynical. However, the silver mask faintly shone with a cold light. giving him a bit of unfathomable profoundness. Even if he couldn't see the person's face, the outline was still very good. Especially when he walked over leisurely, step by step, elegant as a bone, lazy and noble, but there was a strong light that could not be ignored. He said, "Prince Rue." He was so arrogant and presumptuous even when he introduced himself. Shen Qiu almost pulled out his sword. He slapped the table and the desserts on the table shook 3 times as he asked, "You are Prince Rue?" Prince Rue nodded. "Why do you want to marry my sister? What conspiracy do you have?" Shen Qiu shouted. Luo Tan's chin almost dropped down. Shen Qiu's hostility towards Prince Rue was really too big. But even though everyone had this idea in their hearts, to ask it in front of others, would it be too impolite? Jiao Jiao is gentle and sensible, dignified and generous. I have admired for a long time and was anxious to marry. Fortunately, the Emperor's benevolence is vast and powerful and did not disgrace the mission. He slowly said with a smile. Chapter 829. Shen Miao could not help but tremble. She was really not used to Xie Jingxing speaking in such a gentle tone. One must know that when they were not familiar with each other, every time Xie Jingxing saw her, he would probe, look at her coldly and ridicule her. Shen Xian and Shen Qiu suddenly flew into a rage. Prince Rue's words on the surface was praising Shen Miao and also said that he admired Shen Miao, but the more he said it, the more it did not feel right. What was the boundless grace of the Emperor? What did it mean to not fail the mission? Others did not know, but they were very clear. It was obviously Prince Rue who forced Emperor Wen Hui to write down the imperial edict, and the imperial grace was coerced. The imperial grace was not disgraced, but whose mission was not disgraced? Shen Qiu and Shen Exen were like 2 firecrackers that were lacking a spark to explode. This Prince Rue had done all kinds of bad things, so why did he come here to pretend to be a big-tail wolf? Luo Shuiyan's gaze softened. The way a woman looks at a man and a man looks at a man are different. When women look at men, they look at the details. Prince Rue did not use "this prince," but used "I." He did not use "fifth Shen young lady" to address Shen Miao, but used "Jiao Jiao." If it was purely to make use of the Shen family's power, Prince Rue had already obtained what he wanted and there was no need for this. Regardless of whether he was sincere or just putting on an act, it was good that he was willing to put in the effort. For example, Fu Xiuyi. At that time Shen Miao was in love with Fu Xiuyi, but Fu Xiuyi was teasing Shen Miao and was neither close nor distant. He did not directly reject but did not accept and was not willing to put in effort and was not willing to please. So the reason why the Shen family did not want Shen Miao and Fu Xiuyi to be together, other than Fu Xiuyi's own identity that would drag the Shen family into the water, it was also because Fu Xiuyi did not love Shen Miao at all. If he loved someone, he would be willing to put in effort for her. If he didn't want to spend even a little bit of his attention on someone else now, how could he hope for the future? Luo Shuiyan looked at Prince Rue. Since Prince Rue was willing to put in the effort, it was much better than what she thought. What's more, if one were to talk about appearance and temperament, it was really hard for Prince Rue to make others have any ill feelings towards him. Compared to Fu Xiuyi, who made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze, but also carried the airs of a prince, always smooth and slick. Prince Rue, this person, was unbridled and lazy in his actions, but one could see that he had some genuine temperament. This kind of true nature came from the royal family, which was even more precious. Luo Shuiyan hoped that the husband that Shen Miao would marry would not face Shen Miao with a false face. She said, "Your Highness Prince Rue, my name is Yuan, courtesy name Jingxing," Prince Rue said. "Fern can call me Jingxing." Shen Miao almost choked on her tea. Luo Shuiyan was a little surprised. The people of the royal family were very particular about rules. Even blood brothers had to pay attention to this and that. The people of the Great Liang were considered as very noble guests in Mingqi, especially Prince Rue, who was the younger brother of Emperor Yonglu. One did not think that he would let others call him by his courtesy name. Only those who had a good relationship would allow others to call them by their given name. Luo Shuiyan's gaze towards Prince Rue became even more gentle as she said, "Jingxing, take a seat first." She then instructed Jingzhe, "Serve the tea." Shen Qiu and Shen Exen looked at Luo Shuiyan in shock and could not understand why Luo Shuiyan would be so good to this Prince Rui in such a short period of time. When Luo Ling, who was at the side, saw this, he sized him up. Jing Xing. Luo Tan suddenly spoke. Isn't this the name of the heir of the Marquis of Lin and residence in the Ding capital? Shen Miao held the teacup and felt somewhat powerless in her heart. Xie Jingxing was really audacious to the extreme. He actually dared to say his courtesy name here. Did he feel that since Su Mingfeng and Princess Ming already knew of his real identity, why not let more people know about it? Anything that was related to his identity would perhaps arouse the suspicion of others. Not only did Xie Jingxing not avoid it, he even came forward. Even though she was drinking tea, Shen Miao felt that she was almost drunk. Shen Qiu's heart was filled with indignation. Seeing that Luo Shuiyan gave up her seat to Prince Rui and let the servants serve tea, he was already unhappy, and when he heard Luo Tan's words, he said, "Correct. Prince Rui definitely do not know who is the heir of the residence of the Marquis of Lin." Prince Rui turned his head to look at him. "Oh? Who is that?" He is also called Xie Jingxing and is the eldest son of the Marquis of Lin and residence. Others say that the South Xie and the North Shen, their Xie family is a military aristocratic family that is on par with our Shen family. Xie Jingxing is the little marquis of the Xie family, and he is a rare young talent. In the beginning, he was able to defeat a number of people with just one move. Not to mention his literary and military skills, he was also born with a handsome face. He can be considered as a young talent that everyone in Mingqi looks up to. Those who know of him would say good things about him. Shen Qiu sighed. Unfortunately, the heavens are jealous of talents and fell early in the northern Jiang battlefield. He changed the topic and looked provocatively at Prince Ru. One do not know what is the feeling of your Highness Prince Rui to have the same name as such a person? That person is unparalleled in literary and military skills and has matchless looks. What are the chances of you winning? Shen Miao. Hearing Major General Shen's words, it seems that you admire that little Marquis Xie a lot? Prince Rui slowly asked. Of course. Shen Qiu said it vehemently and did not care about Luo Shuiyan's frequent winks at him. Instead, he saw Shen Xian's encouraging gaze and continued, "He is the hero in my heart and no one can replace him." Shen Miao face-bombed. If it was possible, she really wanted to pretend that she did not know Shen Qiu. Looking at Xie Jingxing again, he must be secretly very refreshed. Chapter 830. Shen Qiu fiercely praised Xie Jingxing in front of Prince Rui, and when an ordinary person was mercilessly criticized, their face would not look good. Prince Rui was wearing a mask so that people could not see his face clearly. However, everyone could clearly see that the corner of his mouth was slightly raised and his voice was very gentle and polite. The most important thing was that his eyes could not lie. In Prince Rui's eyes, there was actually some joy. Pleasure? Shen Qiuji spoke till his mouth was dry, but not only did he not see Prince Rui revealing an embarrassed expression, instead he seemed to be in agreement. So to speak, it is indeed a pity. Shen Qiu was very dispirited and became more vigilant towards this Prince Ru. But Luo Shuiyan was very satisfied. She was not as childish as Shen Qiu and was not as picky as Shen Exen. Looking at Prince Rui, she was not angry at Shen Qiu's nonsense. People would always judge if a person was good or not, but Luo Shuiyan had been with Prince Rui for a short period of time and felt that Prince Rui was not bad. He looked very handsome and refined, but his words were not bashful or pretentious. There was a kind of sloppy heroism about him that made people have a good impression of him. It was said that the more a mother-in-law looked at her son-in-law, the more satisfied she became. In Luo Shuiyan's mind, Prince Rui quickly took the lead. In Luo Shuiyan's heart, he was more steady than Su Mingfeng, more straightforward than the Crown Prince, more magnanimous than Feng Zixian, and more than Luo Ling. Luo Ling was one of them, so there was no need to talk about it. Not only was Luo Shuiyan satisfied with Prince Ru, Luo Tan was also very satisfied with her own brother-in-law. Her mind was filled with strange things and asked Prince Rui a lot of novel information about the Great Liang. This Prince Rui did not have much patience with Emperor Wen Hui during the tribute banquet, and when he wanted to leave, he would leave, but when he wanted to stay, he would answer Luo Tan's questions. Previously Luo Tan remembered Prince Rui saving Shen Miao's life, and at this moment the more she looked, the more she felt that only Prince Rui was worthy of Shen Miao. She said, "I see that brother-in-law and Biao youngest sister are extremely compatible. With Biao youngest sister's temperament, only brother-in-law's good interest can cover it." As soon as the two words brother-in-law came out, the room fell silent. Prince Rui was after all a relative of the imperial family, and in comparison, Luo Tan's identity was not worth mentioning. Luo Tan was naturally carefree and did not realize what she had said, but Luo Shui Yen and Shen Xen subconsciously looked at Prince Rui's reaction. Prince Rui's lips slightly hooked up and readily accepted, "Many thanks to Biao older sister's kindness." Sun Qiu was flustered and exasperated. "Who is your Biao older sister? Don't shout." "Brother Qiu, what are you talking about?" Luo Tan glared at him and said with a smile, "Well, I'm younger than you. It's weird for you to call me cousin. You'd better call me cousin Luo." Shen Qiu stared angrily at Prince Rui. This person relied on his good skin and his status to attract females everywhere. Luo Shui Yen and Luo Tan had been tricked by this person. Luo Ling looked at the chaotic situation in front of him and felt that it was somewhat funny, but as he laughed and laughed, he thought of something and could no longer laugh. He looked at Shen Miao with a bitter expression. Shen Miao was thinking about Luo Tan's words just now, and her heart was somewhat inconceivable. What kind of wrong impression did Luo Tan have of Xie Jingxing that she actually felt that Xie Jingxing was a person with a good temperament? She did not know that in the beginning Xie Jingxing was also threatening and ridiculing, and every time she interacted with him, it was like walking on a tightrope, and one was unable to grasp the other party's thoughts. If Luo Tan saw Xie Jingxing's actions of silencing people without batting an eyelid, one feared that she would not be able to say those words anymore. Shen Xen saw that Luo Shui Yen and Prince Rui were talking more and more intimately, and his heart did not feel good. He deliberately coughed twice and forcefully interrupted their conversation before asking Prince Rui dryly, "Did you not say that you came over to deliver the wedding dress? Now you feel that our Shen family's tea is good and deliberately came over to drink?" Chapter 8:31. Luo Shui Yen heard that his words were not pleasant to hear and glared at Shen Xen before turning her head to Prince Rui and spoke in a gentle tone that she had not used to Shen Xen for decades. "Jingxing, did you specially come over today to deliver the wedding dress to Jiao Jiao?" The marriage-bestowing imperial edict came in a rush, and I think that Jiao Jiao would not have time to embroider her own wedding dress. Coincidentally, when I first came to the Ding capital, Imperial older brother let me bring along the best seamstress and tailor in the Great Liang. If one were to meet a young lady that one likes, one must give her the best wedding dress in the world when one marries her back. His smile was shallow and his pair of eyes were as gentle as spring. The wedding dress is already done and had been done for 3 months. Now it is brought over for Furen to take a look. 3 months? Shen Miao was surprised for a moment and suddenly remembered that a few days ago when Xie Jingxing hugged her and said that he wanted to measure the dress. Now that the wedding dress was made 3 months ago, one feared that he already knew her measurements at that time, so why the need to do so much? Sure enough, he was just spouting nonsense again. She actually believed it and was taken advantage of. Thinking of this, Shen Miao glared at him angrily. Xie Jingxing smiled gently. This little action was seen by Luo Shui Yen and her heart became happier. Now this marriage could not be changed even if one wanted to, thus she could only find ways to comfort herself. Who knew that when she saw Prince Rui today, she felt that this person was not bad and felt much more gratified. Now looking at the actions of these two people, it was not like children playing around. Her own daughter always put on the airs of an old person and did not have the naivety of a young female. But in front of this Prince Rui, she showed the side of a young female, and that Prince Rui seemed to dote on Shen Miao a lot. Perhaps this marriage was a match made in heaven. In Luo Shuiyan's heart, Prince Rui was at least 1,000 times higher than Fu Xiuyi. Just as she was thinking, Shen Qiu cried out at the side, 3 months? It was obvious that the marriage-bestowing imperial edict was just passed down not long ago. You are clearly lying. Could it be that you have foresight and knew 3 months ago that you want to marry younger sister? Moreover, how do you know younger sister's measurements? To take an unsuitable wedding dress, No matter how good it looks, younger sister would not wear it. Shen Miao also looked at Xie Jingxing as she also wanted to hear how Xie Jingxing would deal with Shen Qiu's question. Xie Jingxing was indeed an expert and only said, 3 months ago I met Jiao Jiao on the streets by chance. At that time I caught a glimpse of her and made up my mind to not marry other than Jiao Jiao. Imperial older brother only told me to send the wedding dress to my beloved young lady but did not say that I can only send it after marrying. I might as well marry her in the end. When he finished speaking, his voice was incomparably cheerful. He only glanced at Shen Qiu, but it was full of provocation. Shen Qiu was not Xie Jingxing's opponent when it came to talking. These words were beautifully said by Xie Jingxing, but he himself did not gain any benefits. As for the size, Xie Jingxing smiled. If you have the heart to look for it, you'll definitely find it. He gestured for Tai Yi to come forward, and Tai Yi trotted out of the room. After a while, he came back with a huge box and placed it on the table. The box was quite big and seemed to be made of fragrant wood. A faint fragrance of pear blossoms wafted out from it, refreshing the mind. Everyone involuntarily gathered around the table, thinking that the wedding dress would most likely be inside. Even though Shen Miao was usually calm, there was some anticipation in her heart. In the previous lifetime, the wedding dress was embroidered by her, so she was especially attentive to Fu Xiuyi's wedding. She also wanted to have a splendid and gorgeous wedding. After all, the most beautiful moment of a female's life seemed to be the moment when she was the bride. But at that time Fu Xiuyi was still concealing his incompetence and requested for it to be simple and the wedding should not be publicized. Thus, she could only put away her thoughts of wanting to be gorgeous and embroidered the wedding dress in a simple style with plain patterns. Chapter 8:32. But after all, she was a female that was full of yearning for the future and was very fond of beauty. Thus she thought of an idea and used dark red silk to embroider the twin lotus flowers on the outside of the red dress. She also embroidered some peach blossoms on the inside of the dress. Because the dress was inside the outer garment, others could not see it. The twin lotus flowers on the red dress was also embroidered with red silk so ordinary people would not be able to see it. The entire dress was of a plain and simple style. But her heart was very proud of her little trick. She thought that after the nuptial chamber at night, when husband and wife whisper to each other, she would let Fu Xiuyi guess and see if Fu Xiuyi could guess the pattern on the wedding dress. Fu Xiuyi would eventually see her clever and dexterous side and slowly fall in love with her. But at the end, when the lights were bright that night, she waited in the bridal chamber for the entire night until the red candles dried up and her heart turned cold, but she did not see Fu Xiuyi. In the morning of the second day, she was informed that Fu Xiuyi was drunk last night and stayed the night in the study. She did not sleep the entire night and had to enter the palace to pay respects to the emperor and empress. In a daze, she made a fool of herself and made Fu Xiuyi indignant. After giving her the cold shoulder for 2 to 3 months, Fu Xiuyi finally touched her. That wedding dress was the beginning of her pain. From the grievances of that night of marriage, her countless grievances started to cover the sky and cover the earth. Shen Miao had always felt that when one person treated another well, the other person's heart would be warmed up. Even if one did not like it, one would always be moved by the good treatment without any consideration of return. But there was such a kind of person who would enjoy everything that others gave them with a clear conscience but would despise others for not doing well. That wedding dress, Shen Miao and the other young female's happy and secret thoughts were finally not known by anyone. She wanted to ask, "Husband, take a good look at my wedding dress. Did you discover anything?" Even after using her entire life, she could not ask it. The person that she wanted to wear the wedding dress for had never seen it in her entire life. She was lost in her thoughts until Luo Tan's cry of surprise rang in her ears, pulling her back to reality. One saw Luo Shuiyan reaching out and slowly taking out the dress from the chest so that everyone could see it. His movements seemed to be very careful, as if he was afraid of breaking it. It was a very bright red, and the silk thread was extremely thin, as if it was made from thousands of thin silk threads interwoven into a brocade. Furthermore, it had been cut by the best embroidery master. A little more would be more, and a little less would be less. Within the bright red cloth, there were fine and dense golden sparks. It was unknown if the golden sparks were scraped off or something else, but the entire cloth seemed to be sparkling. The red robe was made of sea shark brocade. It was as thin as a cicada's wings and had a crimson glow around it. The embroidered red robe shone with a golden light, and the pattern of a dragon and phoenix was embroidered with 12 colored threads. The golden dragon was mighty, and the colorful phoenix was hazy. If one looked carefully, they would find that the eyes of the dragon and phoenix were decorated with tiny black gems. As for the dragon scales and phoenix feathers, they were cut into fine cat's eye stones, threaded with needle and thread, and embroidered stitch by stitch. The red dress and red pants were a single piece. The color was pure, and it was made wide. However, when a breeze blew past, it was as if a celestial was moving, floating like a celestial. However, this was also done with care. There were also lotus flowers embroidered at the corners of the robe, symbolizing auspiciousness. There was no need to mention the xia pendant. There were filaments, inlays, carvings, dots of jade, and hundreds of pearls, which dazzled people's eyes. There was a pouch for grandchildren, a silver deposit, a demon-revealing mirror, and a heavenly official lock. The most attractive thing was still the phoenix coronet. The golden collar of the coronet was decorated with a ring of jewels. The edges were inlaid with gold bars, and the center was inlaid with 12 gems. Each gem was decorated with 6 pearls, and the gems were separated by flower beads. There were 6 fans, and each fan was decorated with a golden dragon, 2 jeweled flowers, 3 flower beads, and a string of beads hanging from the sides. Shin Qiu even foolishly counted. There were 100 colorful gems on the entire phoenix coronet, and countless red gems adorned the phoenix's eyes. Chapter 8:33. Luo Shui-yen held the heavy phoenix coronet in her hands. She had an indescribable feeling in her heart. Even if Prince Rue was putting on an act, it was really too unexpected for him to be able to do this. This phoenix coronet was the dream of all the females in Mingqi and was not inferior to the Empress phoenix coronet. She anxiously said, "Jing Xing, isn't it a bit inappropriate for Jiao Jiao to wear this phoenix coronet?" The animal on the crown was a phoenix. The phoenix was the king of all birds. Only the queen or the princess could wear it. Even though Shin Miao married Prince Rui and was Prince Rui's consort, she was not at the level of a princess. The crown should be decorated with colorful pheasants. Prince Rui smiled, for rest assured. Imperial older brother knows about this phoenix crown. There are only 2 brothers in our great Liang imperial family. If Jiao Jiao marries into the imperial family, she will only be a member of the imperial family, nothing more than a phoenix. She can bear the responsibility. Shen Xen looked at Prince Rui thoughtfully. Luo Shui-yen still wanted to say something when she heard Luo Tan call out, "Such beautiful embroidered shoes." Luo Tan carefully took out an embroidered shoe from the bottom of the chest and held it in her palm. The embroidered shoes were very small, and they were also red. However, there were small phoenixes embroidered on the shoes. The shoes were small, so it was very difficult to embroider an entire phoenix, not to mention that the phoenix feathers were decorated with tiny gems. However, there was also a pattern on the soles of the shoes. There was also a lotus flower spreading out, implying that every step would bring forth a lotus. At the very top of the shoe were 2 round and large South Sea mermaid pearls. Shin Miao was slightly stunned when she saw it. Southern Sea mermaid pearls were very precious. Because the fishermen could only collect the pearls in the shallow waters, it was not easy to find the pearls in the deep waters. Only the most skillful pearl divers could go to the slightly deeper waters. Even so, it was not easy to find such pearls. Shen Miao remembered that the most favored consort Su Xian only had one and wore it on her head every day to show that she was different. What he didn't know was that there were 2 of them right in front of him, and they were even casually placed under his feet. If Su Xianfei knew about it, she wouldn't be so angry. Shen Xen was silent for a moment before slowly saying, "You are considerate. This kind of extravagance and such an exquisite wedding dress could be said to be unique in the entire Mingqi. Prince Rui did not need to do this. But he did it. No matter what, when Shin Miao got married, she would not get ridicule but envy. Prince Rui smiled, as long as Jiao Jiao is happy. Shen Miao's heart moved. Looking at that exquisite and beautiful phoenix coronet and that enchanting red embroidered shoes, she thought that if this kind of clothing was worn on her body, it would definitely be extremely impressive. She had never worn such gorgeous clothes in her previous life. In her previous life, when she married Fu Xiuyi was still young and simple was her daily habit. Later on, when Fu Xiuyi ascended to the throne, she became a hostage of the Qin state, not to mention any gorgeous clothes. By the time she returned, there was already a beautiful and intelligent Mei Furen in the palace. Compared to Mei Furen, she was asking for trouble. Then, as the Empress, she had to dress in a dignified and elegant manner. She had to wear an old-fashioned color and a formal style. She was obviously a young female, but compared to Mei Furen, she seemed to be much older than Mei Furen. Thinking about it, her young female period seemed to have completely ended on the night she married Fu Xiuyi. What followed was painful and forced growth. Was Xie Jingxing sent by the heavens to let her complete the long-cherished wish of her previous life? Shen Miao laughed in her heart. It seemed that some of her regrets, Xie Jingxing had unknowingly helped her to fill them up completely. Perhaps this was also a kind of fate. After the wedding dress, even the picky Shen Qiu had nothing to say. Chapter 8:34. In all fairness, if it was Shen Qiu, he would not be able to make such an exquisite and expensive wedding dress. Even though he would wholeheartedly give everything that he had to his beloved young lady, but if he could not do it, he would not be able to do it. Prince Rui was able to do it because he was Prince Rui. That was all. Shen Qiu could not help but look at Shen Miao. If Shen Miao followed such a person, it would be a life of glory and splendor. If this Prince Rui's temperament was really as good as today, then Shen Miao's life would be worth it. After talking for a while, Luo Shuiyan warmly invited Prince Rui to stay for a meal. Prince Rui did not refuse and smiled, but I want to speak a few words with Jiao Jiao alone. One do not know if Furen will allow it? Shen Qiu immediately became alert. What do you want to speak to younger sister? It is the same to speak to me. Come, let us go to the courtyard to exchange pointers. Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Qiu's ear to one side and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? How can Prince Rui spar with a boorish person like you?" Looking at Prince Rui again, her eyes were filled with smiles. Then let Jiao Jiao bring you into the room to speak. Do not speak for too long. It will be time to eat in a while. Shen Miao, Shen Qiu. Mother, do you still remember who is your biological son? The more Luo Shuiyan looked, the more she felt that Prince Rui was not bad. A dignified prince of the great Liang, to want to speak with Shen Miao, he had to specially ask for her opinion. It could be seen that he was one who understood etiquette. Luo Shuiyan was also thinking of letting Shen Miao and Prince Rui stay longer. Just now she had seen the little movements in the eyes of both of them. Females knew best what females were thinking in their hearts. Shen Miao's appearance clearly showed some interest in Prince Rui. Why did she not see her glaring at Luo Ling, Su Mingfeng and Feng Zixian? This kind of happy little quarrelsome couple should be written in a storybook. Luo Shuiyan happily went to instruct the kitchen. Even though Shen Miao was somewhat speechless, she still looked at Xie Jingxing and said, "Follow me to the courtyard." Shen Qiu also wanted to follow, but Shen Miao turned her head and said, "Eldest brother, you should not go." Shen Qiu's eyes widened in disbelief. "Younger sister." "Cousin Qiu." Luo Tan tugged at the corner of his clothes, a young couple whispering, "What is a grown man eavesdropping for?" She looked at the absent-minded Luo Ling. "If you want to compare notes, then look for older brother Ling." Luo Ling recovered to his senses and smiled bitterly but still said, "If Biao older brother wants to exchange pointers, I will naturally accompany." This was the first time Shen Qiu was rejected by all the women in the room, and he felt extremely wronged. As Shen Miao's future husband, he naturally had to test him properly. How could he, just because of flowery words and a face that could not be seen, clearly deceived females into having good relations with him? Women were indeed easy to deceive. He looked at Shenexen and said unhappily, "Father, are we just going to let that brat off like this?" Shen Exen lowered his head and no one knew what he was thinking about. When he heard that, he looked at Shen Qiu. After the meal, spar with him and test his martial arts. Shen Qiu's eyes lit up as he rubbed his fists and said, yes. As expected, Shen Exen was on the same side as him. He must let Prince Rui see clearly that it was not easy to marry the women of their Shen family. Shen Miao brought Xie Jingxing to her own courtyard. Bai Lu and Shuang Jiang were outside with the young maids to tidy up the flowers and plants in the courtyard. When they saw Shen Miao bringing a grown man back, they jumped in shock. It was Gu Yu and Jingzhe who greeted Prince Rui before the maids recovered to their senses and paid their respects. Shen Miao directly brought Xie Jingxing to her boudoir. She was not afraid of being seen by others as it was not the first time Xie Jingxing came to her room. Every 3 to 5 days he would come over to drink tea and eat snacks, thus she was familiar with the roads of the Shen mansion. When she turned back, she saw Xie Jingxing sizing up the surroundings and could not help but be sullen. It is not the first time, what is there to look at? Chapter 8:35. This is the first time entering from the main entrance. Xie Jingxing smiled and sat down in front of the table before looking at her. The feeling of entering from the main entrance is not bad. Shen Miao ridiculed. Are you complaining that you were not given a status in the past and that you did not come properly? Intelligent. Xie Jingxing drank his tea. That is because you came by yourself. No one invited you. Shen Miao gritted her teeth. Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile. Fern treat me very well and Biao older sister is also not bad. Shen Miao rolled her eyes in her heart. That was because they had not seen Xie Jingxing's brutal side. If they had seen it, they would not be so good to him. She asked, what words do you have to say to me? The matter that you entrusted me to investigate, I have helped you to investigate clearly. Xie Jingxing said. Investigate the matter? Shen Miao was too busy these days and had forgotten to ask Xie Jingxing to investigate something, so she asked in puzzlement, what matter? Xie Jingxing's eyes flashed. News of Pei Lang. Shen Miao was suddenly enlightened. Thinking that there was no news of Pei Lang these days, she became really anxious and asked, what did you find out? Did something happen to him? You are very worried about him? Xie Jingxing raised his brows. He is a person who works for me. Shen Miao frowned. All right. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders. He is not very well now. Fu Xiuyi seemed to have discovered his identity and locked him in the dungeon of the residence of Prince Ding, and tortured him to force him to tell the truth. Shen Miao's heart tightened slightly. Is he still alive? Fu Xiuyi did not get the answer he wanted and would not let him die so easily. Xie Jingxing stared at Shen Miao after speaking. You do not seem to be worried that he would betray you. He will not. Shen Miao answered. Xie Jingxing frowned slightly. Shen Miao thought that Pei Lang, this person, even though he was too rational at times, so rational that he was unreasonable, but in terms of loyalty, no one could find fault with him. In his previous life, he worked for Fu Xiuyi and had always been loyal to Fu Xiuyi. Pei Lang was brimming with talent and later on, Prince Zhou and the rest also wanted to pull him back from Fu Xiuyi's hands. At that time, Prince Zhou and the rest had the upper hand and could give Pei Lang more than Fu Xiuyi, but Pei Lang did not waver. Pei Lang was a very principled person, and this principle was above everything else in his heart. For example, in the previous life, he assisted Fu Xiuyi, so he did his best to help Fu Xiuyi sit firmly in this position. He used all the people around Fu Xiuyi that he could use, including himself. Even though afterwards, because of Fu Ming and Wan Yu, Shen Miao knelt down and begged for Pei Lang's help, Pei Lang was unmoved and even watched the Shen family's destruction with his own eyes. Perhaps he even contributed a part of it. But Shen Miao had never doubted Pei Lang's loyalty. Speaking of which, Fu Xiuyi was impatient to deal with her, and after they got married, he was mostly cold to Shen Miao. Other than the occasional concern and greetings to express his responsibility as a husband, most of the time, Shen Miao was alone in the residence of Prince Ding. Shen Miao wanted to please Fu Xiuyi and knew that Fu Xiuyi valued Pei Lang the most. She asked Pei Lang for advice, hoping that Fu Xiuyi would look at her in a different light. Pei Lang had indeed patiently taught her, and there were no times when he was impatient. Shen Miao's understanding of Ming Qi's structure, other than occasionally hearing Fu Xiuyi talk about it, Most of it came from Pei Lang's guidance. Pei Lang was her teacher in Guangwentang, and speaking of which, he could be considered as her teacher in the residence of Prince Ding. So Shen Miao did not suspect that Pei Lang would betray her. Fu Xiuyi has many tricks up his sleeves. Shen Miao rarely showed a trace of anxiety, especially towards those who betrayed him. Once he discovered such a person, he would never trust them and would personally take action to kill them. Since Pei Lang had already been discovered by him, in order to obtain an answer, Fu Xiuyi might keep his life, but it does not mean that he would not do other things. If he were to be dismembered, Shen Miao shuddered. Shen Miao had personally seen how Fu Xiuyi treated those who betrayed him. Shen Miao had also personally seen what kind of place the dungeon was. About from that time onwards, other than adoration towards Fu Xiuyi, there was also a trace of fear and dread. After all, he was tolerant and gentle in front of others but vicious and merciless behind others. It really made one unable to not feel a chill. Xie Jingxing's eyes were sharp. How do you know how he would treat those who betrayed him? If it was in the past, Shen Miao would be able to hear that something was wrong in Xie Jingxing's words, but now her mind was not here and could not be bothered about it. After thinking about it, she then looked at Xie Jingxing and said, "Do you have a way to save him?" Xie Jingxing withdrew his hand that was drinking tea and said, "Reason." Shen Miao looked at him. His eyes were sharp and did not retreat at all, making one's heart shrink. Because there is no reason to stand idly by. Chapter 8:36. Because there is no reason to stand idly by. Shen Miao said. Xie Jingxing was silent. Shen Miao herself also knew that this reason could not be justified. In the eyes of others, before cooperating with Pei Lang, she and Pei Lang basically did not have any place to interact. Even in the name of a student and teacher in Guangwentang, there were only a few sentences that they had exchanged. When one was not familiar with a person, one would hand over such important matters to him, and there was never a trace of suspicion. In other people's eyes, it was naturally strange. Especially since Xie Jingxing was not a careless person. He was good at paying attention to all the details that were overlooked by others and had a keenness that made others timid. But there were a lot of things that could not be explained clearly. She could not tell everything about her past lifetime, and not to mention whether others would believe it or not, she was unable to convince herself. Shen Miao thought that Xie Jingxing would continue to question, but he nodded his head and said, "Yes." Shen Miao was surprised for a moment before letting out a sigh of relief. The most comfortable thing about dealing with Xie Jingxing was that before they were not friends, Xie Jingxing would think of ways to figure out all the secrets of the other party, but after becoming friends, he would respect and not force others to admit things that they were not willing to say. Of course, perhaps he would be able to figure it out through his own methods. But, Xie Jingxing muttered to himself, there are many guards in the residence of Prince Ding, and it is not that simple to save someone under Fu Xiuyi's eyes. Shen Miao's heart moved. You want to take action personally? Otherwise? One could not hear any joy or anger in his tone, but there was an inexplicable meaning. I would not dare to make any mistake to the person that you personally seek help for. Shen Miao looked at him hesitantly. With Xie Jingxing's identity, it was enough of a headache just because of Princess Rong Xian and Su Mingfeng, but these two people at least had a trace of affection with Xie Jingxing, but forget about Fu Xiuyi. If Fu Xiuyi knew of Xie Jingxing's identity and did not take the opportunity to create some trouble, then Shen Miao would have known him for so many years in vain. Be careful, Shen Miao said. I do not want to become a widow after entering the door. Xie Jingxing said, how can you curse yourself like this? He then smiled ambiguously, do not worry. One will not become a widow. Shen Miao. Forget it. This person's words just now were definitely to scare her. Xie Jingxing was such a cautious person and would not personally take action. She was thinking too much. After talking for a while, Luo Shuiyan's maid came over to urge them to eat. Shen Miao and Xie Jingxing walked out, and the meal was extremely harmonious. In the past, Xie Jingxing could even coax the unreasonable Princess Rong Xian to be happy, much less the candid Luo Shuiyan. He was knowledgeable and his words were polite, so that even Luo Ling Luo could not help but be attracted to his. Shen Xian, who was such a picky person, was also speechless, but Shen Qiu remembered what Shen Xian said to him in the afternoon, that he and Prince Rui should exchange pointers. Halfway through the meal, he threw out a sentence, "One has eaten too much today." Brother-in-law, later accompany eldest brother to exchange pointers. It is not possible to be cooped up in the room all day. We men should exercise our muscles and bones. Shin, 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 comma, shin, 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 shing, shin, shin he, shin, comma, shin, 2. Want mother to exchange pointers with you? Mother, Shin Qiu said with grievance, you should not meddle in the matters of us young people. He then looked at Prince Rui and suddenly thought of something. Oh, almost forgot to ask. Does brother-in-law know martial arts? Know a little. Xie Jingxing smiled as he looked at him. Shen Qiu said seriously, that is good. After all, one is from the imperial family, one think that the martial arts master that was invited would not be bad. Do not worry, eldest brother will definitely give in to you. But eldest brother is a person who had stayed in the army and would always spar with that group of soldiers and would not be able to control his strength. If one is not careful. He cupped his hands, hope that brother-in-law can understand. Chapter 8:37. He kept on calling out eldest brother and brother-in-law intimately, and his words seemed to be filled with guilt, but looking at that expression and tone, no matter how one looked at it, it was filled with excitement. She felt that if it was not for the fact that the meal was not finished, she would immediately pull Prince Rui to the training grounds to spar. Luo Tan and Luo Ling were watching from the sidelines. Luo Tan was thinking that she was also very curious about the extent of Prince Rui's martial arts. The common people knew very little about Prince Rui of the Great Liang and previously only knew that the imperial family of the Great Liang were all beautiful, and this Prince Rui was no exception. But the rest was very mysterious and no one had specifically mentioned about his martial arts, so one think that he should not be outstanding. But Luo Tan believed in her own intuition. Last time when she went to the residence of Prince Rui to seek help, she felt that Prince Rui was a very powerful person. Shen Qiu going up against Prince Rui, what was the situation? Luo Tan had always been a person who would not mind the matter getting bigger and treated it as an onlooker. Luo Shuiyan was so angry that she could not wait to beat Shen Qiu up, but with Prince Rui here, she had to maintain her good demeanor as the mistress. She could only look at Shen Exin and said in a threatening tone, "You do not care?" Who knew that Shen Exin, who had always been obedient to Luo Shuiyan, did not even bat an eyelid and swallowed a mouthful of food before saying with an unconcerned attitude, "Care about what? Young people's matters, let them solve it themselves." Shen Miao could see it in a moment. How would Shen Qiu have such guts to repeatedly challenge Luo Shuiyan's patience? It was obvious that Shen Xian was supporting him from behind. Shen Xian wanted to test Xie Jingxing's martial arts? Shen Miao looked up at Xie Jingxing beside her and seemed to have noticed her gaze. Xie Jingxing turned his head and his lips hooked up. How could this person have such ability to send a wedding dress and also cause a complete mess? Shen Miao really admired him. With Shen Xian's approval, if Luo Shuiyan were to obstruct it this time, it would seem that she was unreasonable. Thus after the meal, Shen Qiu could not wait to pull Xie Jingxing to the open space in the Shen mansion's courtyard. Luo Shuiyan was afraid that something would happen and could only follow. Naturally, Shen Exin wanted to watch, and Luo Tan pulled Luo Ling along to watch the bustle. Shen Miao had to go even if she did not want to. As a result, the courtyard was surrounded by people, as if they were here to watch the duel. Luo Shuiyan warned Shen Qiu openly and secretly not to let anything happen and to be gentler in his actions. Prince Rui was a scholar and the children of the imperial family had not suffered before, so one must not use the barbaric attitude towards him like how one would treat a soldier's younger brother, and not scare him. Shen Qiu's words went in one ear and out the other and excitedly instructed his men to carry a row of weapons and asked, "Which one does brother-in-law want? Choose first." He spoke in an extremely magnanimous manner. Then he looked at the weapons he took out. Good heavens, long spears, halberds, iron rods, scimitars, 9-section whips, giant hammers, long swords. There were even a few huge axes. With one look, one could tell that it was an extremely clumsy and difficult weapon to wield. Luo Shui-yen was so angry that she didn't want to watch anymore. Lord Rui was slightly startled. Shen Qiu said complacently, "Brother-in-law, these weapons are all very suitable. If you like that one, feel free to choose. It can be considered that Big Brother is going easy on you." Shen Miao, one did not know why, even though the usual Shen Qiu was not a lively person, that was only in terms of worldly wisdom. He still had the coldness and iron-bloodedness that a military general should have. But today, as compared to Xie Jingxing, why did he seem so clumsy, almost like a child? Shen Miao could almost guess how funny his eldest brother was in Xie Jingxing's eyes. Xie Jingxing glanced at the weapons and casually picked up a short dagger from the pile. This. Shen Qiu was surprised for a moment as he did not think that Xie Jingxing would choose a short dagger and said meaningfully, "Brother-in-law has good eyesight. But an inch shorter is an inch more dangerous. Usually not many people would dare to carry this kind of dagger. Do not choose because it is light. It is better to choose this long sword. Even though it is rusty, it is not heavy and you can carry it." Chapter 8:38. Many thanks to eldest brother. Xie Jingxing smiled, "I want this." Shen Qiu coldly snorted, "Then do not blame eldest brother for dealing with you mercilessly. It is because your choice of weapon is too clumsy." Xie Jingxing's lips twitched. Even though he was wearing a mask, the smile on his lips seemed to have some carelessness and some ridicule which could easily irritate others. Shen Qiu immediately picked up a long spear and pointed it at Xie Jingxing. Luo Shui-yen covered her face. "Please, eldest brother." Xie Jingxing said politely. Boasting shamelessly. Shen Qiu took the lead and rushed over with the spear. Many years later, the mighty young General Shen would become old General Shen. His military exploits were envied by countless people, and he had won countless battles. He was known as the god of war, and was respected and worshipped by all martial artists. But he still remembered this warm afternoon. This would become a memory that he would never be able to erase for countless years to come, and it would be a humiliation. Everyone did not see clearly what was going on. Shen Qiu carried the spear and rushed over, and both of them were in a mess, but very quickly they separated again. Shen Qiu's spear fell to the ground and Prince Rui's fingers held the dagger firmly on Shen Qiu's neck. Everyone in the Shen family, Prince Rui released his hand and played with the dagger in his fingers before looking at Shen Qiu with a smile that was not a smile. "Many thanks to eldest brother for letting me win." With these 6 words, Shen Qiu's face suddenly turned purple. Everyone in the Shen family looked at each other and did not understand what this meant. Luo Tan muttered, "Older brother Qiu? Lost?" Everyone was shocked. Shen Qiu's martial arts was said to be second among the younger generation of Ming-Chi, but no one dared to say first. Firstly, he was personally taught by Shen Qiu since young, and the Shen family had a military background for generations. There were many books on martial arts in the house, and Shen Qiu was considered to have a deep accumulation. Secondly, when Shen Qiu was still young, he was brought along by Shen Qiu's side to fight on the battlefield and had seen real swords and spears. With these 2 things, it could be said that Shen Qiu's martial arts skills were all full and there was not a bit of weakness. But Shen Qiu's spear was actually picked up by Prince Rui, and Prince Rui's dagger was still on Shen Qiu's neck. No matter how one looked at it, Shen Qiu did not have anything left. Shen Qiu gritted his teeth and his heart was unwilling, but he had to say, "Willing to bet, one must be willing to lose." Luo Tan was the first to clap. "Brother-in-law is so powerful. To be able to beat my older brother Qiu, you are the number 1 in Ming-Chi." Luo Tan quickly covered Luo's mouth. "Shen, you are Biao Biao Yen." Luo Shen's Jiu Xing said. "Brother are Yen Tian Yen Shen." He looked at Luo Shui-yen uneasily, thinking that her son had lost to an outsider. Luo Shui-yen would definitely not feel comfortable in her heart. Who knew that when he looked back, he saw that Luo Shui-yen had already walked quickly to Prince Rui's side and said, "Jing Xing, your martial arts is that good?" "I am, Yen, Yang, Yen Yang Tian. I brother is Yen." Young person should not. Person. Luo Shuiyan said, "If one has the ability to be proud, then one should be proud. This is how a young person should be." Shen Miao silently said in her heart. Xie Jingxing was already the most prideful person in the world. If one were to let him be more prideful, he would be able to ascend to the heavens. In this meal, both the host and guest were happy. Luo Shuiyan and Luo Tan asked Xie Jingxing a lot of questions about martial arts. Xie Jingxing's humble attitude was just right and he seemed to know everything, which made Luo Shuiyan pleasantly surprised. After Xie Jingxing left, everyone dispersed and Luo Shuiyan was still nagging. "Prince Rik, this child looks not bad. Not to mention his identity, just based on his courage, insight, looks and character, he is one of the best in the world." Chapter 839. Who can see what he looks like when he is wearing a mask? Xin Qiu said, "Mother is too biased. What if he has a scar on his face and is very ugly? Moreover, how can one see one's character? He does not look like much to me." "What do you know?" Luo Shuiyan said, "Even though I can't see this child's face, I can see that his bearing is not bad. Even if his face is not that good, his bearing can make up for the shortcomings of his face. Moreover, the bridges that I have walked are more than the roads that you have walked. One can see one's character just by looking at the person's eyes, and it is not something that can be faked." Shen Qiu's lips twitched. "Just biased. Shen Qiu, that is enough for you today." Luo Shuiyan swept a glance at him and thought of the previous matter and suddenly got angry. "What intentions do you have to go against others at every turn? If you have the time to be jealous of others, why not train your martial arts? Just a few moves in the other's hands and the knife is already on your neck. Do you still have any face?" Shen Qiu quickly said, "I know, mother. I will go and find father to train martial arts now. Immediately. Immediately." As he spoke, he ran away like a wisp of smoke. Luo Shuiyan looked at the wooden box on the table. Inside was Xin Miao's wedding dress and thought that such an expensive dress should be locked up before she could be assured. She lifted the box and planned to personally place it in the storeroom but saw that there seemed to be another layer on the cover of the box. Suspicions rose in her heart, and when she opened the layer, a small booklet that was wrapped in a red cloth suddenly fell out. At the other end, Shen Qiu was talking to Shen Exin. "Father, that Prince Rue definitely trained in martial arts for more than a few years. From the looks of it, he should have started training since he was young. Otherwise it would be impossible to determine victory or defeat with just a few moves." Shen Qiu thought about it and said, "Moreover, his moves are very ruthless and not inferior to those small soldiers. It is reasonable to say that a child of the imperial family need not be like that." Finishing, he said hatefully, "This time it was me who took it lightly. The next time I come, I will definitely beat him up till he has a whole new level of respect for me." Shen Exin waved his hands and said, "Enough. You are not his opponent." "Father." Shen Qiu turned pale with fright. "You won't look down on me because of my one mistake, right? I really let my guard down this time. Who would have thought that a fair-skinned scholar like him was actually hiding his true strength? Are these the only things that are hidden?" Shen Exin interrupted him with a complicated expression on his face. "Father?" Shen Qiu was puzzled. "What do you mean? Could it be that he's hiding something from us? Is he a bad person? All right, you can go out." Shen Exin said, "Don't let your imagination run wild and properly practice your martial arts." Shen Qiu. He had only been defeated once, but why did he seem to have become a weak scholar? Shen Qiu angrily left. From today onwards, he planned to go to the school grounds every day to compete in martial arts. But before Shen Qiu left, he could not help but glance at Shen Exin. Why does father look so worried? Shen Exin was indeed very worried, and this worry was gradually magnified in his heart to the point that it could not be concealed. He wanted to do something to divert his attention, but the more he did so, the more stubborn he thought about this matter in his mind. But he could not say it to anyone else. If he were to say it to others, one did not know how big of a change it would cause. He let Shen Qiu test Prince Rue's martial arts skills because he wanted to see if Prince Rue had the qualifications to be the Shen family's son-in-law. Before today, Prince Rui was only a name on Emperor Wen Hui's imperial edict, and the Shen family did not expect him to be like that. They saw Prince Rui as a person who harbored malicious ambitions, and Shen Miao's marriage was not equal. Chapter 840. But today, seeing Luo Shuiyan and Prince Rui chatting happily, Shen Xan understood his wife the best, and Luo Shuiyan was very satisfied with Prince Rui. If Prince Rui had already made Luo Shuiyan satisfied, then regarding Prince Rui, it was not as simple as just a name on the imperial edict. For him to become the son-in-law of the Shen family, he would need to go through all kinds of harsh tests. Martial arts was one of them. One did not need his martial arts to be unrivaled, but he must be able to protect Shen Miao's safety. As a woman's husband, if his wife was in danger, at least he would be able to protect her safety. Shen Xen was thinking like this and did not expect that in this competition, there would be some knack to it. The few juniors could not see it clearly, but he and Luo Shuiyan could see it clearly. Especially Shen Xian, he could even see the moves that both of them used when they were confronting each other. Shen Xian had seen Prince Rui's dagger choking technique used by someone before. Xiading. The Shen family and Xie family's political differences were passed down for generations. The Shen family paid particular attention to the rules of war, but the Xie family's requirement was to win by surprise and not play the cards according to common sense. The ancestors had fought for many years, and when it reached Shen Xian's generation, it was almost a natural habit. As for why the two aristocratic families became enemies, one did not know. The person who understood you the most was not a friend but an enemy. This saying was not false. Ever since Shen Xian was young, he had been secretly competing with Xiading. The Shen family had the Shen family spear, and the spear dance was proper and murderous. The Xie family did not have the Xie family spear, but Xiading's dagger choking technique was something that others could not envy. It was most suitable to assassinate the enemy's general. Think about it, when one was fighting fiercely with the enemy on horseback, a dagger would suddenly appear from the long spear and pointed at the throat. How terrifying would that be? Relying on this move, Xiading was able to win every battle. Xiading did not pass this move to others and only passed it to his only son, Xie Jingxing. He did not even pass it to his two Shu sons. When Xie Jingxing was confronting others when he was young, he also used this move. At that time, Shen Xen coincidentally saw this scene and was surprised that Xie Jingxing was able to use this move to the point of perfection at such a young age. He even slightly modified Xiading's choking technique to make it more ruthless. And today, when Prince Rui and Shen Qiu confronted each other, he used this move. Or it could be said that it was a move that was modified by Xie Jingxing. The angle was not the slightest bit off, but one did not know if it was intentional, but it was used slower than before, simply to let Shen Xian see it clearly. Shen Xen was unable to conceal the shock he felt when he saw it. Other than using silence to conceal it, he did not know what to think. Xie Jingxing was already dead. He died on the battlefield of the northern borderline 2 years ago. But how would Prince Rui of the Great Liang know that Xie Jingxing used a dagger to strangle his throat, especially when it was the exact same action? Between people, even if they did the same thing, the same trick, there would be a little bit of difference. But Prince Rui's and Xie Jingxing's figures, at that moment, in Shen Xian's eyes, actually overlapped with each other, and there was no difference at all. Thus a strange thought emerged. Could Prince Rui be Xie Jingxing? Xie Jingxing was already dead. On one hand, Shen Xian felt that his idea was inconceivable and ridiculous, but on the other hand, he couldn't help but think about it. He even felt that when Prince Rui was competing with Shen Qiu, his movements were so slow, and it was simply to let him see it clearly. Could it be that Prince Rui wanted him to see this fact clearly? Shen Qiu's heart was bewildered, but it was not good to say it to others. He thought that it would be better to investigate first and let things be clearer before looking at it. Chapter 841. After all, he was not willing to see Shen Miao get injured. And if Prince Rui was Xie Jingxing, then the entanglement involved would not be that simple. The days passed by, and in a blink of an eye, it was only a few days away from the end of the year. For an ordinary person, the days at the end of the year were the happiest. Because it was the end of the year, one had to treat themselves better, eat well, drink well and play well. Every day was joyous. The joyous days were short, thus one would feel that they were living at a disadvantage. But for Pei Lang, the days were like a death by 1,000 cuts. Every day it would roll around his body, torturing and grinding off a small piece of flesh and then continue on the second day. Sometimes one could not wait to die a quick death tomorrow, as it was better than such a long torment. He did not know how long he had been locked up in the dungeon of Prince Ding's residence. Other than the guards who tortured him, even Fu Xiu-yi did not come. The daily torment made him suffer, and his 2 legs were already dripping with blood and sweat. One heard that after today, his kneecaps would be gouged out. After gouging out his kneecaps, he could only kneel and wait for others for the rest of his life. For a proud and arrogant person like Pei Lang, it was undoubtedly a lifetime nightmare. Fu Xiu-yi was indeed well aware of the weakness of human nature. A young person who was in the prime of his life with a belly full of knowledge and a bright future would have to kneel and live from now on. Even if he were to see the light of day one day, his entire life would be completely ruined, and one feared that it would be a life worse than death. What was strange was that even at this time, Pei Lang did not intend to betray Shen Miao. Even though his rationality kept persuading him to say it out. After saying it out, everything would be free. Even if it was death, it was better than to continue endlessly like this. He and Shen Miao were not considered as friends, but it was Shen Miao who used Lu Ying to threaten him, and he had no choice but to do things for Shen Miao. Even though Shen Miao, this person, was fierce every time, she would never lay her hands on innocent people. Even if he really betrayed her, Shen Miao would never vent her anger on the innocent Lu Ying. After all, this kind of torture was just too painful. Even though his rationality was thinking like this, but every time he was about to open his mouth, he would close it at the last moment. It was as if he said it out, he would have committed a heinous crime. Pei Lang thought, could it be that he owed Shen Miao a huge debt in his previous life? He was actually willing to suffer for her sake. It was just that, after so long, no one had come to save him. Pei Lang was somewhat disappointed in his heart. Most likely Shen Miao had forgotten about him, or perhaps in her game of chess, sacrificing an insignificant chess piece was not enough to be taken to heart. Just as he was thinking, he suddenly heard a commotion outside. He didn't know what had happened, but it was noisy and noisy. It was accompanied by the sound of something breaking. The heat wave was almost coming towards him. Someone shouted, "There's a fire! There's a fire!" A fire? Pei Lang's heart was startled. This was Fu Xiu-yi's dungeon, and on normal days, only Fu Xiu-yi's trusted aides and guards would come to the dungeon and no one else would come. Due to the strict surveillance, they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. But he didn't expect that there would be a fire here, and it would probably be extinguished very soon. But Pei Lang guessed wrongly this time. Not only was the fire not extinguished, it became bigger and bigger. There was even some black smoke that floated in, and the messy footsteps outside gradually became weaker, as if it was getting further and further away. Pei Lang's cell was the furthest away and the innermost cell. Others would not be able to see it on normal days, and it almost separated him here. When the fire came, Pei Lang's cell would suffer. If there was a fire in front, the further in one went, the bigger the fire, separating the outside and the inside into 2 parts. The deeper one went, the more dangerous it was. Generally speaking, no one would dare to go in. Pei Lang would not do so, as no one in this world would risk their lives to save a condemned prisoner like him. Seeing the rolling heat wave, Pei Lang felt that the scene in front of him was familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before, but there was a sense of relief in his heart. Let it be like this? It was also good to end like this. He had just closed his eyes when he heard an unfamiliar voice in front of him. "Hey, are you dead?" Pei Lang opened his eyes in surprise and saw a black-clothed person standing in front of him. This person's face was covered with a black veil, and one could not see his face clearly, only revealing a pair of bright eyes. In such a fierce fire, there was no trace of panic at all. Seeing that Pei Lang did not answer, he seemed to be somewhat impatient and found a key from somewhere and directly opened the cell door. This person was actually here to save him. Pei Lang's heart actually gave birth to some disbelief, but with this attire and appearance, it was impossible for him to do anything else. But Pei Lang's heart moved. Why was this person's eyes so familiar? Chapter 842. Shen Miao lit up a lamp in the night and wanted to tidy up the books that Shen Qiu sent over during the day. Shen Qiu always felt that she liked to read, and these days, thinking that she was about to get married, he asked others to find a few books. Some of these books recorded some of the major events of the previous dynasty, while some were books about romance. Shen Miao planned to pick out the books and give them to Luo Tan and Feng and Ning. Those books from the previous dynasty could be kept as they might be of use in the future. Just as she was tidying up, she suddenly heard some movements outside the window. She was not used to having people serving her at night, and usually Jingzhe and Guyu would leave early, so they would definitely not appear at this time. Looking up at the window, there was no one. After thinking for a while, Shen Miao opened the door and walked to the courtyard to take a look. She was not afraid that it was a bad person. After all, there was still Song Yang in this courtyard. If it was a bad person, Song Yang would have already made his move. Who knew that when she walked to the courtyard, she saw a person standing under the tree. She was surprised for a moment before taking 2 steps forward with the lantern, and was shocked to discover that it was Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing did not wear his purple robes but changed into a black robe. When he was wearing purple robes, he was a noble gentleman, but when he was wearing black robes, there was an additional cold and austere aura. It was just that the lazy smile on his face was the same as before as he watched Shen Miao walk forward. Shen Miao felt that something was wrong with Xie Jingxing, but she could not tell what was wrong. She stood beside Xie Jingxing and asked, "Why are you standing here?" If it was in the past, Xie Jingxing would have entered the room without an invitation and went to her room to drink tea. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile, and before Shen Miao could speak, Xie Jingxing suddenly fell towards her. Shen Miao subconsciously supported him but touched a large wet spot on his back. With the weak lantern light, she saw that it was a ghastly sight of large patches of blood. Because it was too cold outside in the winter, one's sense of smell was not very sensitive, and when Xie Jingxing fell on her body, she could smell a strong smell of blood. Shen Miao softly called out, "Song Yang." There was no response from the surrounding, as Song Yang did not seem to be around. Shen Miao's heart was somewhat anxious. At this kind of anxious moment, Song Yang had to disappear at this time. She did not dare to alarm the others, so Xie Jingxing came rolling out of nowhere with an injury. She half-dragged and half-carried Xie Jingxing back to her room and let Xie Jingxing sleep on her couch. She then wanted to call a doctor over. Just as she was about to leave, Xie Jingxing seemed to be sober for a moment. Just to leave, Xie Jingxing seemed to wake up for a moment and said, "Meow." Xie Jingxing laboriously took out a medicine bottle from his bosom, and before Shen Miao could continue asking, he fainted again. Shen Miao made a decision in a short moment. There was still some hot water in the room that she used to wash her hands at night. She brought the hot water over and found a clean handkerchief to wet. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly untied Xie Jingxing's clothes. Under the light, the hot water, the young man's body was hot. The body was well built. Shen Miao's face was inexplicably hot, and she tried her best to move faster. Shen to pull. Xie Jing Shen Miao would Xie, face to Frode. Shen Miao, Shen's face. Shen Miao's Shen face to. Every time Shen Miao tugged, Xie Jingxing would frown slightly, as if he felt uncomfortable in his coma. Helpless, she could only find a pair of silver scissors, burn them with fire, and carefully cut open his clothes. It was not that Shen Miao had never seen a male's body before. Just take Fu Ming's for example, she had seen it many times, but this was different from facing Xie Jingxing. Especially at this moment, in order to protect Xie Jingxing, she did not even call Jingzhe Guyu and was alone in Xie Jingxing's clothes. Inevitably, it was somewhat awkward. Chapter 843. But very quickly, the awkwardness on her face dissipated and was replaced by a dignified expression. There were many knife wounds on Xie Jingxing's body. These knife wounds were not deep, but there were a lot of them. Even though they were not fatal, Shen Miao knew that with so many knife wounds, just the blood loss alone would be enough to kill a person. At that moment, she did not dare to be careless and immediately used a handkerchief dipped in hot water to wipe off the blood stains around Xie Jingxing and took out the medicinal powder from the medicine bottle and sprinkled it on. After searching for a long time and not finding a clean cloth, Shen Miao could only take out a new cloth that she made and bandaged Xie Jingxing's wounds. Shen Miao had never bandaged anyone before, but she had seen how Shen Qiu's soldiers did it before, thus she followed suit. Even though it was somewhat ugly, at least the bleeding had stopped. She then took out a few pills to replenish qi and blood from the cabinet. Those were bought by Luotan, and it was said that a female's complexion would not be good during their menstruation, and eating this would make them look better. Even though Xie Jingxing was not on his menstruation, he had lost a lot of blood, and this should be able to replenish it. Shen Miao crushed the pills and soaked them in hot water before feeding it to Xie Jingxing to drink. After finishing everything, the night was so deep that it was like a thick fog that could not be dispersed. Even the muttering of the animals could not be heard outside. Xie Jingxing was lying on her bed with his upper body naked, and his body was wrapped in 3 layers of Shen Miao's chest cloth. No matter how one looked at it, it was strange. Shen Miao's lips twitched, and she planned to turn Xie Jingxing over and check if there were any other injuries on his body. Xie Jingxing's clothes were wet, but his pants were dry, thus Shen Miao did not suspect that his waist and back were only injured. When she was turning Xie Jingxing, her hand inadvertently touched Xie Jingxing's thigh. Shen Miao was like being burned by fire and was about to retract her hand when she suddenly felt that something was not right. The skin under her hand was hard and was not as delicate as other uninjured skin. Instead, it was like a thick layer of scab. Her heart moved, and she subconsciously lifted Xie Jingxing's trousers and saw that in the depths of Xie Jingxing's lower abdomen, there was a terrible scar that was spreading inwards. This was different from the new scars that Xie Jingxing had added today. Although there were a lot of scars today, they were not deep, so they were not fatal. However, this one was twisted and turned, and the color of the wound was very heavy. It was clearly an old wound, but after so long, there was still such a deep scar. It was clear that the injury was deep enough to see the bone. It was a ghastly sight. When Xie Jingxing was in Mingqi, one did not hear that he was injured. Could it be that he was injured in the Great Liang? Shen Miao's heart was filled with suspicions, but she found out that there were other wounds. There were big and small wounds, and every one of them was deep to the bone. Although the wound had already healed, people couldn't help but be flabbergasted. How did Xie Jingxing survive so many life and death tribulations? She did not discover that she had already touched Xie Jingxing's thigh and was about to touch downwards when the person on the bed gave a muffled grunt and grabbed her wrist. Shen Miao's face turned red as she thought that Xie Jingxing had woken up and misunderstood that she was taking advantage of him. She subconsciously looked at Xie Jingxing, but saw that Xie Jingxing's brows were tightly knitted and lips were pursed. Both his eyes had not opened, and it seemed that he had not woken up. Shen Miao heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Even though she still had doubts about those scars, she did not dare to touch further. Xie Jingxing's clothes were already torn by her, so Shen Miao could only take an outer garment that she made and put it on for Xie Jingxing to wear, covering him tightly. She was afraid that Xie Jingxing's wounds would not have a fever in the night, so she moved a stool and sat in front of the bed to guard. She did not know when she fell asleep. The morning sun shone brightly and the rooster crowed. When Shen Miao woke up, she discovered that she was already sleeping on the bed and her body was covered with a thick bedding. She clearly remembered that she was sitting in front of the bed to guard Xie Jingxing last night, but did not expect that she would actually fall asleep in the middle. Most likely she was extremely tired that she did not even know that she was moved to another place when she slept. Chapter 844. She subconsciously rolled over and saw that the room was empty and there was no Xie Jingxing's figure. She was stunned for a moment before hearing a laughing voice from behind, "Looking for me?" Xie Jingxing walked over wearing a large set of clothes. One did not know where he found this set of clothes from, but he had just freshened up as there were water droplets sliding down his chin to the depths of his clothes. Shen Miao looked at him strangely. Xie Jingxing was injured and unconscious yesterday, but now he looked refreshed. How could one see the precarious appearance yesterday? She asked, "Is your body better?" Xie Jingxing smiled, "Of course." Shen Miao nodded her head. "Indeed, the qi replenishing pill is effective. Biao older sister did not lie to me?" "Qi replenishing pill?" Xie Jingxing frowned. "What is that?" It is used by females to replenish their blood. Shen Miao's expression did not change as she said, when females come to the Kuei water, take one and the body will not be so weak. Last night I saw that you lost a lot of blood and assumed that your blood is weak, so I gave you 3 pills. She smiled as she looked at Xie Jingxing. It seems that it is all to its credit that you can recover so fast. Xie Jingxing's smile froze. When Shen Miao saw him being deflated, she could not help but laugh in her heart. But the next moment she could not laugh anymore as she heard Xie Jingxing leisurely speaking. Oh, since that is the case, take it as repayment for touching me last night. Seeing Shen Miao stunned, Xie Jingxing smiled ambiguously. Last night, one did not know where someone was touching. Shen Miao's face turned from green to white and then from white to green as she said angrily, "You are awake?" He can't speak, but his mind is still clear. Xie Jingxing walked to the front of the table and sat down. After he freshened up, he looked as natural as if he was in his own residence. After heating up a pot of tea and pouring a cup for himself, he smiled at Shen Miao. Shen Miao hesitated for a moment and did not move before asking, "What is the matter with the injuries on your body? What happened yesterday?" "Helping you to do things." Xie Jingxing said it easily. "It is better not to go to a place like the residence of Prince Ding next time." He stretched his waist. "Fu Xiuyi really has a lot of tricks that even I could not handle." "You went to Prince Ding residence?" Shen Miao's eyes widened. "You went to the dungeon of Prince Ding residence?" Xie Jingxing's eyes flashed. "You know a lot about the residence of Prince Ding and even know that there is a dungeon." He said, "Correct. Last night I went for a stroll and conveniently rescued your teacher Pei." Shen Miao looked at him blankly. She did not think that Xie Jingxing would personally go and save people. Xie Jingxing's identity was sensitive and Fu Xiuyi was not a person that could be easily fooled. Once Fu Xiuyi discovered any clues, Xie Jingxing would inevitably have a lot of trouble. Shen Miao sought Xie Jingxing's help because she knew that there were many capable people around Xie Jingxing, but she did not expect that Xie Jingxing would put himself in danger. Shen Miao was unable to describe the feeling in her heart, but if it was the residence of Prince Ding, then Xie Jingxing's injuries could be explained. Fu Xiuyi was a very cautious and suspicious person because he himself had countless enemies. Thus the residence of Prince Ding was like an impenetrable copper wall. As for the dungeon of the residence of Prince Ding, the prisoners that were locked inside were those that Fu Xiuyi thought to be important, and most of them were spies sent by the enemy. The dungeon was a place where the residence of Prince Ding hid many secret characters, thus it was of utmost importance. It could be said that the amount of effort that Fu Xiuyi spent on guarding the dungeon was much more than the entire residence of Prince Ding. In such a situation, it was not easy for Xie Jingxing to barge into the dungeon alone and to save a person. Seeing Shen Miao in a daze, Xie Jingxing tilted his head and looked at her suspiciously. "Why did you not ask about your teacher Pei's life or death?" Chapter 845. Shen Miao recovered to her senses. "Is he still alive?" "Alive and well." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows, not even touched by a single spark of fire. Shen Miao caught the words in his words and asked, "Fire?" "I burned down the dungeon of the residence of Prince Ding," Xie Jingxing said, "to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots." Shen Miao sucked in a breath of cold air. If the dungeon of the residence of Prince Ding was burnt down, then it would not be strange for Fu Xiuyi to exterminate the person who set the fire. Most of the people in the dungeon had secrets that Fu Xiuyi wanted to know, and with Xie Jingxing's fire, those secrets could never be known by Fu Xiuyi. Fu Xiuyi had lost so much, so how could he easily let Xie Jingxing off? At this time, Shen Miao could not help but admire Xie Jingxing. She thought that her courage was big enough, but that was because she relied on the memories of her past lifetime before she dared to do these things. Xie Jingxing was always able to do things according to his heart's desire. Even if he poked a hole in the heavens, he would still complain that the heavens was not strong enough. Shen Miao was silent for a moment before asking, "He is now in the residence of Prince Rui?" Xie Jingxing said, "Gao Yang is treating him." When Shen Miao heard this, she found it somewhat strange. Gao Yang was treating Pei Lang, so why did Xie Jingxing not let Gao Yang treat him and instead came to her courtyard with injuries? Could it be that Xie Jingxing thought that her medical skills were better than Gao Yang's? But she still had a pressing problem that she wanted to clarify. After looking at Xie Jingxing for a while, Xie Jingxing smiled. "What are you looking at me for? I am indeed not that kind-hearted. If it was not for you, how did your injuries come about?" Shen Miao interrupted his words. "There are many guards in the residence of Prince Ding and there are Fu Xiuyi's death soldiers in the dungeon." It was rare for Xie Jingxing to explain to her, "It is inconvenient to have too many people and one can only go in alone." "Not this." Shen Miao paused for a moment before asking, "Your old injuries, those look very deep. Are they injuries from the Great Liang?" Xie Jingxing was startled and did not speak. "Ming Qi did not hear the news that your life was in danger." Shen Miao said, "But it seems like an old injury. How did it come about?" "Concerned about me?" Xie Jingxing looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. "Small matter. Do not mention. I want to know." Shen Miao's eyes hung down. "Even if it is to prepare to go to the Great Liang. You can't let me face a completely unfamiliar place and person unprepared." This reason was dignified, but Shen Miao knew that the real reason to know where those injuries came from had nothing to do with this. Other than the hatred from his previous life, Xie Jingxing already had a deep understanding of her, but from Shen Miao's point of view, there were still many things that she did not understand about Xie Jingxing. In the past, she was very afraid to understand a dangerous person like Xie Jingxing. The more she knew about his secrets, the more dangerous it would be. But now, she wanted to take the initiative to know about Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing looked at the tea in front of him and smiled. "I got injured in the northern Jiang." Shen Miao suddenly raised her head. Xie Jingxing said faintly, "There are members of the Tian family in the Xie family's army. In the beginning when I went to the northern borderline, because there was a change in the plan, I returned to the Great Liang in advance to restore my identity. But it is also a fact that there is an ambush in the Xie family army. The northern Jiang people and the Tian family worked together and set up a trap. Originally it was targeted at Xie Ding, but because of my request for commander, it was changed to deal with me. That day I was prepared but did not expect that the Marquis of Lin An's trusted aide was the Emperor's people, and he plotted against me. Even though there was the Great Liang's Mou army secretly supporting me, I was also seriously injured. Imperial older brothers sent people to beat me at my own game and replaced me with a deceitful beam. The Emperor thought that the plan was successful, but in fact I was brought back to the Great Liang to recuperate and was able to get out of bed and walk around after recuperating for half a year." He looked at Shen Miao and smiled disapprovingly. "To be accurate, it was injuries in Ming Qi." Chapter 846. There was a huge wave in Shen Miao's heart, but in the blink of an eye, she woke up. She was wondering why Xie Jingxing would be injured. So that was how it was. Many things had changed between his previous life and this life, and the father and son of the Xie family were one of them. In the past life, it was the Marquis of Lin and Xie Ding who went on an expedition and died in defeat. Following that, the residence of the Marquis of Lin and declined, and Xie Jingxing received the imperial general's order to go on an expedition again, but he also ended up with thousands of arrows piercing his heart. Not to mention, if Xie Jingxing faked his death in the past lifetime, there was one point that was certain. The Xie father and son died in the battlefield at the same time, and this was the ending that the Fu family had long planned for the residence of the Marquis of Lin. In this lifetime, because of some changes, one did not know why Xie Jingxing changed his mind and set off for the expedition in advance. The Emperor originally wanted to deal with the Marquis of Lin, so he took the opportunity to change it to Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing was dead, and one did not expect that the Marquis of Lin would not be able to recover from this setback. Thus the imperial family did not need to take action again. In this way, it was in response to what Xie Jingxing said to Su Mingfeng. "The Ming Qi did not nurture me and only erase me." Ming Qi indeed only wanted to kill Xie Jingxing. In any case, the residents of the Marquis of Lin had made great contributions to the Ming Qi's rivers and mountains, but when the birds were used up, the bow was hidden. Once the officials' meritorious service was high, the imperial family could not wait to suppress it. Even though Shen Miao had long known that the decline of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was inextricably linked to the imperial family, but it was different to hear it from Xie Jingxing's ears. If even Xie Ding's trusted aides were spies sent by the imperial family, then every move of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and would be under Emperor Wen Hui's eyes. Thus Xie Jingxing was not close to Xie Ding since young. Even though he was not sure who the spy was, but he knew that the imperial family's people had never left the residence of the Marquis of Lin. Perhaps even Madame Fong, Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu were secretly controlled by Emperor Wen Hui's people, but now that Xie Changchao and Xie Changwu were dead, Madame Fong was on the verge of collapse and there was no successor in the residence of the Marquis of Lin. One think that Emperor Wen Hui would not have any other thoughts towards the residence of the Marquis of Lin, and Shen Miao looked at Xie Jingxing again and her heart had the joy of surviving a calamity. Xie Jingxing's life in Mingqi was indeed not as superior as what Su Mingfeng imagined. Perhaps in the beginning when the great Liang sent Xie Jingxing over, it was because they fancied the position of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and, thinking that after the sudden death of Princess Yuqing, the Marquis of Lin and would love this son even more. But one did not expect that in this seemingly gorgeous Marquis residence, there was a hidden crisis. Xie Jingxing living in the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was not necessarily happier than living in an ordinary family. On the contrary, he had probably been forced to accept a life that many adults found difficult to adapt to since he was young. Scheming against each other, deceiving each other, the hypocrisy between the royal family, and the hidden murderous intent amidst the happiness. If there was no support from the great Liang in the battlefield of the northern borderline, or if the timing was slightly slower, the current Xie Jingxing would really only be left with a pile of yellow soil. Xie Jingxing looked at Shen Miao's expression. Even though he tried his best to remain calm, there were still some fluctuations in his breathing. His lips curled up into a smile as he stretched his hand across the table and caressed her head. What are you afraid of? When you reach Great Liang with me around, who dares to touch you? The Great Liang also has an imperial family. Shen Miao always felt that things were not that simple. Xie Jingxing disapprovingly said, I am also an imperial family. He withdrew his hand and spoke without a care. Other than imperial older brother, you do not need to be afraid of anyone. Even if you see imperial older brother and really anger him, just tell me and I will ensure your safety. The Great Liang is my territory. Whoever dares to bully you is going against the entire world. Xie Jingxing said, do not mention these embarrassing matters of the Mingqi in the future as it will hurt one's self-esteem. He smiled teasingly but Shen Miao felt a slight sourness in her heart. How was it hurting one's self-esteem? It was just that the past days were not considered to be very happy, so she simply did not mention it. After experiencing hardships, the aristocrats should have been enjoying the innocent and worry-free life, but they were like ants living under the oppression of other countries. Chapter 847. After speaking a few more words, the sky was bright and seeing that Jingzhe and Guyu were about to come over to wake Shen Miao up, Xie Jingxing then left. After Xie Jingxing left, Song Yang appeared out of nowhere. Shen Miao stared at him and asked, why were you not around last night? Last night when Xie Jingxing was injured, at that critical moment, Song Yang's figure had disappeared and now that he came out, he had already left. Song Yang's apologetic voice was heard, young foreign, it is really unfortunate that there was a task yesterday and this subordinate thought that he would return quickly. Who knew that there was a delay midway and when he returned, it was already the next morning. His expression was vexed and sincere as he asked, does young foreign have any instructions? Nothing much. Shen Miao waved her hands and left after closing the window. Song Yang jumped back onto the tree and his heart felt wronged. Last night, Master instructed him not to make a sound, so Song Yang could only squat on the tree for the whole night and did not even cover himself with a blanket. One did not know what Master and young foreign were doing in the room. Thinking about it again, Master suffered a light injury but still had to rush back to the Shen mansion from thousands of miles away. Gao Yang wanted to stop Master's bleeding but Master did not allow it and allowed blood to flow all over his body. Was it not all to make young Furin's heart ache? Pitiful for himself, to be exposed to the cold wind for an entire night and was even scolded by young Furin. Master also did not give any reward, so why did no one feel heartache for him? At the other end, Xie Jingxing was walking towards the residence of Prince Rui. Song Yang had already renovated all the residences between the residence of Prince Rui and the Shen mansion. There were no walls between the residences and it almost formed a continuous courtyard. The wind was cold and dew was heavy in the deep winter, and he only casually wore a black cloak over his loose inner clothes. Black and white deeply collided together, making his face look somewhat pale. He wasn't wearing a mask, and his expression wasn't as relaxed as usual. His beautiful eyes, which were always curved like peach blossoms, were cold and heavy, with a hint of coldness. Toward Shen Miao, he finally lied. Those crisscrossed wounds, other than in the northern Jiang, there were also wounds in the Great Liang. The wound in the northern Jiang was from the Xie family's thousands of troops and horses, Xie Ding's most trusted Xie family's deputy general's knife. That knife was so deep that the bone could be seen. Afterwards, when he was recuperating in the Great Liang for half a year, there were a few times when people said that he could not pass this hurdle. In the end, it was Gao Yang who risked his life to save him from the hands of the King of Hell. Gao Yang said that if the blade had been a centimeter off, or if he had been delivered to Gao Yang a little later, his life might not have been saved. Other than Gao Yang, Emperor Yonglu and his trusted aides, no one else knew about the news of his injury. When he appeared in front of the Great Liang's courtiers again, he was still the handsome Prince Rui with his robes fluttering. It was just that it wasn't easy for a prince to suddenly appear in the royal family. Even if Emperor Yongle used his authority to suppress them, in this world, everything was related to benefits. The appearance of the identity of Prince Rui would cause some people to lose their benefits. Therefore, plots, sneak attacks, assassinations, traps, and conspiracies emerged one after another. Their methods were treacherous and hard to distinguish. It wasn't that there were no moments of life and death where his life hung by a thread. During these times, he had also suffered many injuries. The struggle in the Great Liang was more dangerous than in the Mingqi. In the Mingqi, his identity was after all hidden as the imperial family was dealing with the entire Marquis of Lin and not him alone. In the Great Liang, all his dangers came from the title of Prince Ru. All the big and small arrows in the dark were all aimed at his life. And every time, after a deep crisis, the one who appeared in the court the next day was still Prince Rui with a lazy smile. A long-term plan. In everyone's heart, Prince Rui was a scheming and ruthless enemy. They no longer acted rashly. They respected and feared him. In their hearts, they could not wait for Prince Rui to die, but on the surface, they had to bow to Prince Rui. That was what Xie Jingxing risked his life to fight for. He used 2 years of time to stabilize the identity of Prince Rui in the Great Liang, and no one dared to doubt him, provoke him, or scheme against him. Those fights in the snowy nights, the traps in the court, were all shredded together like the black robe last night. Those who stood in the sunlight were forever noble, elegant, and spotless people. Shen Miao said, even if it is to prepare to go to the Great Liang. You cannot let me be unprepared to face a completely unfamiliar person and place. In this winter morning, Xie Jingxing was walking slowly and his green boots made a rustling sound as he stepped on the snow. There were ice crystals swaying on the trees like hanging jewels. A faint smile slowly floated on his lips. What was there to prepare for? Anyway, all the troubles would be swept away by him before that. Chapter 848. On this day, there was an uninvited guest in the residence of Prince Ru. The person who came was armed with a long sword and looked mighty and majestic. With one look, one would know that he was someone who had gone through many hardships on the battlefield. His brows were resolute and there were traces of hardships as he stood straight at the entrance of the residence of Prince Rui. The guard at the door stopped this burly man, but this man said, "Bring me to see Prince Rui." This person's tone was really big, but the people of the residence of Prince Rui were used to being overbearing and even the servants had some arrogance. One did not fall into this person's trap and instead said respectfully, "There is no invitation. His Highness does not see outsiders." Just as the burly man was about to get angry, he heard a surprised voice from inside. "General Shin?" Looking up, it was Tai Yi who walked over in big strides. When he walked closer, he glared at the guard and said respectfully, "General Shen, this servant is not sensible and hope for the magnanimity to forgive. This subordinate will bring you to see His Highness." That guard's eyes widened. Most likely he just understood what kind of person General Shen was and then looked suspiciously at the other party, as if he did not expect that the other party would come at this time. Shen Exen had a stomach full of anger, and these days he tossed and turned restlessly. Every time he thought of his suspicions in the past few days, he would not be able to sleep well. He thought that with the passing of time, this matter would gradually be forgotten, but one did not expect that the longer it was, the harder it was for his heart to let it go. Shen Exen was a person who did not like to stir things up. Once there was any doubt or tiredness, he must make it clear, not to mention that this was a big matter that concerned Shen Miao's entire life. Thus he finally decided to personally make a trip to the residence of Prince Rui. No matter what the ending was, he must make it clear. Who knew that when he just arrived, he would meet a guard who did not have eyes, which made his already uneasy heart even more unhappy. Fortunately, Tai Yi was a sensible person, and when he saw that Shen Exen was somewhat unhappy, he changed his ways to make him happy. He only said that recently everyone in the residence of Prince Rui was busy with the marriage matters, and it was to let Shen Miao have a grand marriage and not lose face in Mingqi. Shen Exen followed Tai Yi all the way, and indeed, as Tai Yi said, the entire residence of Prince Rui was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, making it look very festive. In any case, the people of the residence of Prince Rui placed a lot of importance on this marriage, and it was a comfortable matter. Shen Xian's heart then felt much more comfortable. When they reached the door of a room, Tai Yi stopped his footsteps and said, "This subordinate cannot enter His Highness' study as someone had already informed before. General Shen can enter directly." Shen Exen thought that the conversation between him and Prince Rui would be very private and could not be heard by outsiders. If the servants could not enter the study, it would be much more convenient. At the same time, he had some doubts in his heart. Prince Rui did not allow the servants to enter but only allowed him to enter. Could it be that he was not afraid that he would make a move on him? But after turning around, it was clear that with the skills that Prince Rui had displayed when he was competing with Shen Qiu, he would not be forced to the point of being helpless. Even though he was thinking a lot in his heart, Shen Xian's face was still calm as he responded and lifted his feet to walk towards the door. However, he saw a furry white thing suddenly jumping out from the door. Upon a closer look, it was a white tiger. It was just that its body was still small and most likely it had not matured yet, as it shouted at him in a childish voice. Shen Exen almost subconsciously brandished his blade to chop it down. It was Tai Yi who immediately went forward to carry the white tiger away before Shen Exen took a deep breath and pushed the door open to enter. In the room, Prince Rui was sitting on a chair reading a book. His sitting posture was not very proper and was very lazy. The book that he flipped through was even more casual, as if he was just casually looking at it and not seriously looking at it. Shen Exen frowned. "Prince Rui?" Chapter 849. Different from Luo Shuiyan, even though Prince Rui intimately let everyone in the Shen family call him Jingxing, and Luo Shuiyan did so, Shen Xian's heart could not get over this hurdle. Males and females were different. Females could rely on their intuition to judge if a person was friendly or malicious, but males could not rely on intuition. Especially Shen Xian, he was more willing to rely on evidence to do things. Prince Rui looked up and casually placed the book on the table. Shen Xian saw that it was a military book, and it was a very obscure military book. Ordinary old generals would read it, and Prince Rui was only 22 years of age. To read such a book, either he was putting on an act or this person was deeply hidden. Before Prince Rui came to visit, in Shen Xian's eyes, Prince Rui was only relying on the name of Emperor Yongli's younger brother and was an idle prince who acted unbridled and arrogant. But after that day of competition with Shen Qiu, looking at Prince Rui again, Shen Xian felt that this person was not that simple. Perhaps this was a man's intuition. "General Shen, accompany me to play a game of chess." He did not call him Master Shen, or any other intimate terms, as he felt that there was some meaning of separation. Shin Xian said, "I do not know how to play chess." Prince Rui raised his hand and took the chessboard from the other side and placed it on the table. He gave Shin Xian a jar of white pieces and kept a jar of black pieces for himself. He said, "General Shin and I use the chessboard as the country, the chess path as the boundary, and the pieces as the soldiers. How about a game?" When Shin Xian heard about military matters, he became excited, and seeing that the other party was only young, he felt displeased from being looked down upon and said, "Come then." Both of them arranged the pieces and started to play chess. Different from Prince Rui's appearance, Prince Rui's chess style surprised Shin Xian. The other party had a ruthlessness that was not commensurate with his age. Originally, war chess was very tiring, and one had to seriously think about every step, as pulling one's hair would affect the whole body. But when Prince Rui played chess, it was as if he did not use any extra time to think. Instead, he would move wherever he wanted to and was very casual. And when one looked at the seemingly casual move, one would discover that the other party's move was very ingenious. Shin Xian's chess skills were usually not bad, but when compared to Prince Rui, he actually fell into a disadvantageous position. Shin Xian even had an illusion that he had already played chess with Prince Rui before. Otherwise, how could Prince Rui seem to know in advance where his next chess piece would land? The match was over, and the result was, as expected, Shin Xian had lost. Prince Rui said, "You have lost." Shin Xian waved his hand and said, "Again." "It's still the same." Prince Rui said, "What do you mean?" Shin Xian frowned. "You've lost," he said. Shin Xian had lived for so long, and Emperor Wen Hui had to give him enough face. Other than Luo Shuiyan, there was no one who dared to speak to him like this. His face immediately turned angry and was about to get angry when he saw Prince Rui lightly speaking. One fear that General Shin did not come to Prince Rui's residence today for a game of chess. His lips hooked up as he asked, "What is the matter?" Shin Xian's angry words were stuck in his throat. Prince Rui seemed to have a kind of ability to provoke one's heart and then change the topic without a trace, as if he did not say anything just now. This kind of ability was really like a person, and that was the Marquis of Lin and Xie Ding. Every time Xie Ding and Shin Xian had a dispute, he would have this cynical look. Shin Xian had an honest character and was easily serious, but he was played around by that scoundrel Xie Ding. Suddenly thinking of Xie Ding, he thought of his motive for coming to Prince Rui's residence. When Shin Xian thought of this, he did not even have the mood to get angry at Prince Rui. He looked straight into Prince Rui's eyes and did not let go of the slight smile on Prince Rui's face as he slowly asked, "Previously, when you were competing with Shun Qiu in the Shun Mansion, where did you learn the move of pressing the dagger against Shun Qiu's neck?" Chapter 850. Hearing that, Prince Rui smiled. "General Shin is talking about the dagger locking the throat? I used it so slowly and thought that General Shin had seen it clearly. But do you need me to do it again for General Shin to see?" Shin Xian was surprised for a moment, and his heart suddenly swayed. Prince Rui indeed did it on purpose. He had already said that the dagger locking the throat that day seemed to be deliberately used slower, as if it was deliberately to let him see clearly what kind of move it was. At this moment, hearing Prince Rui admit it, Shin Xian's heart was unable to describe what kind of feeling it was, but there was more suspicion. He asked, "You know that it is called the dagger locking the throat. How did you learn it?" "Learned it long ago." Prince Rui lazily said, "Did General Shin not see it before?" "Did General Shin not see it before?" Shin Xian's brain made a bang sound, as if thunder exploded in his heart, causing every inch of his body to tremble uncontrollably. Many years ago, on the streets of Mingqi, he had accidentally seen the son of the residents of the Marquis of Lin and Xie Ding's son using this move on others. At that time, he thought that Xie Jingxing's move was much more powerful than his father's. Now Prince Rui said, "Did General Shin not see it before?" Prince Rui had never come to Mingqi before. Shin Xian had never seen anyone use this move before. Shin Xian's heart was like a stormy sea. At this moment, he was at a loss for a moment. He did not know if he should show a surprised or horrified look, but the other side of his heart was calm. These few days of tossing and turning in bed had been confirmed at this moment that his suspicions were correct. He asked, "Are you Xie Jingxing?" Prince Rui directly took off his mask. Shen Xen sucked in a breath of cold air. The relationship between the Shen family and the residents of the Marquis of Lin and was not good, but it was because of this that Shen Xen understood the residents of the Marquis of Lin and the best. Xie Ding gave birth to a son that seemed to be born to counter him, and Shen Xen had expressed that he was very happy, but in his heart he secretly admired Xie Jingxing. He felt that even though this youth was a little mischievous, he had a kind of straightforwardness and freedom that the noble young masters of the Ding capital did not have. Therefore, Shen Xian clearly remembered Xie Jingxing's appearance. The person in front of him now looked more mature and handsome, but there was still a shadow of the past between his brows. Shen Xian understood in that instant. Some of the things that had troubled him previously seemed to have finally been answered. He said, "What's going on? Shouldn't you explain yourself?" His tone was like a senior disciplining a junior. Shen Xen even had the absurd illusion that he was helping Xie Ding discipline his son. Xie Jingxing smiled gently and poured a cup of tea for Shen Xen. Father-in-law drank tea and listened slowly. In the next hour, Shen Xian heard a shocking secret from Xie Jingxing's mouth that he had never thought of. Shen Xen had never thought that Xie Jingxing would be a prince of the Great Liang with such a bizarre and bumpy background, and even more did not think that Xie Jingxing would have such guts to become Prince Rui of the Great Liang and still dare to swagger to Mingqi. Was he not afraid that once his identity was exposed, what kind of trouble would it bring to himself? After listening to Xie Jingxing's words, Shen Xian's heart was filled with anger, indignation, regret, hesitation, and all kinds of complex emotions intertwined together. But he still understood in the fastest speed what kind of decision he should make at this time. He said, "Since you have this identity, Jiao Jiao cannot marry you." But Xie Jingxing asked, "Your purpose is not only to come to Mingqi to pay tribute." Shen Xian's words had a ruthless sharpness to it as he said, "The Great Liang's ambition will not stop at this. There will be a day when the Great Liang will take action against Mingqi, and at that time, you and we will meet on the battlefield. If Jiao Jiao were to marry you, how do you want her to live? Could it be that she has a difficult choice between you and Mingqi? Even if I defy the decree or think of other ways, I will not make things difficult for Jiao Jiao." Chapter 851. Father-in-law worries too much. Xie Jingxing smiled without a care. "She knows my identity and understands the situation she is facing better than you. Perhaps you should think about the relationship between the Shen family and Mingqi." Shen Xen heard the hidden meaning in his words and unconsciously frowned. "What do you mean?" Xie Jingxing snapped his fingers and his gaze landed on the chess game that had just been finished. Shen Xian's white pieces had almost been swallowed up, but Xie Jingxing's black pieces were still all over the board. Shen Xen had lost miserably and this chess game did not look too intense. Xie Jingxing said, "Just now the game of chess with father-in-law was played by me using the identity of the imperial family of Mingqi. Father-in-law didn't notice anything?" Shen Xen suddenly raised his head and said angrily, "Nonsense. Whether it's nonsense or not, you and I both know." The smile on Xie Jingxing's face suddenly disappeared and his lazy expression was replaced with an almost harsh sharpness. "I do not believe that father-in-law did not see a thing or two about Mingqi's attitude towards the Shen family. In fact, if it was not for Shen Miao secretly dealing with it, one fear that the Shen family would not be able to protect themselves like now. I am not someone with a Buddha's heart, but I am not willing to see Shen Miao protecting your Shen family alone and you all do not know anything. She is only a young lady and I am not willing to let her be a bad person." Shen Xen was so angry that the beard at the side of his lips straightened, but he still caught onto the key point in Xie Jingxing's words and asked, "What happened to Jiao Jiao? What did you mean by your words just now? Tell me clearly." "Father-in-law and mother-in-law are stationed in the northwest all day, and they have the world in their hearts. Naturally, they are too busy and can't take care of Shen Jiao Jiao. Do you think that the second and third household of the Shen family are good people? In the beginning they colluded with Prince Yu and wanted to send Shen Miao to Prince Yu's bed so that they could give Shen Miao a bewitching scent in Wulong Temple. How did Shen Yuan die? How did Ren Wanyun become crazy? What happened to Shen Gui and Shen Wan? Jing Chu Chu, Jing Guanxing? It was one thing for the Shen family to scheme against Shen Miao. The imperial family of Ming Qi had never cared about your head. Do you think that when you retreated to the Shaochun city, who was the one who dealt with it, and that the Su family saw you suddenly appeared, and by a stroke of luck, let the emperor give you a way out, was it really a coincidence? Is it really heaven's blessing that the Shen family can escape unscathed every time? He looked at Shen Xian's stiff expression and ridiculed. 2 years ago father-in-law returned to the court and coincided with old Shen Taitai's birthday. Was it Shen Miao who personally started the fire in the Shen family's ancestral hall? Was it to let you see the Shen family's ambition? She used her own life to warn and comfort. General Shen, do you dare to say that you can still protect her safety? Shen Xian was like being struck by lightning. Ever since he and Luo Shuiyan returned to the Ding capital, these matters had happened one by one and he had suspected that something was wrong, but every time he investigated, he was unable to find anything. Afterwards there were many matters in the Ministry of War and he did not have much time to get entangled in it, thus he threw it to the back of his mind. Shen Miao did not mention it before, so Shen Xian also ignored it. Now hearing the whole story of these good things from Xie Jingxing's mouth, Shen Xian could not tell if he was shocked or angry in his heart and was actually speechless. The second and third household of the Shen family had come to this stage. It was all because of Shen Miao's schemes. General Shen must not blame her for being vicious and merciless. If she was not like this, one fear that the grass on her grave would be more than 1 zhang tall. Xie Jingxing's mouth was saying sarcastic words, but his eyes became sharper, almost making one breathless. He said, "Perhaps father-in-law is a good general to the world, but I think that it is not the case for Shen Miao. I do not know why she wants to shoulder all these matters alone, as if she owes it to the Shen family. But from what I see, General Shen is not a good father, but the Shen family is very lucky to be able to raise Shen Miao, this daughter." Chapter 852. She is managing for all of you and doing everything possible to protect the Shen family. The future of the imperial family of Ming Qi is also the person that she wants to deal with. I do not understand that General Shen now said that Shen Miao would be put in a difficult position. He said coldly and mockingly, "Do you really understand Shen Miao?" Shen Xian sat on the chair, but at this moment he suddenly felt ashamed. On the contrary, even though Mai and Shen Jiao's friendship is not that deep, at least we have gone through thick and thin together. Heard that a good night is short together, and came up with plans in the night. I once saved her life and also rescued her from danger. Xie Jingxing said, "Why can't I marry her?" In Shen Xian's heart, there was suddenly an infinite exhaustion. The Shen Miao that Xie Jingxing mentioned was one that he was not familiar with and unfamiliar with. Even those things that Shen Miao had experienced, he was completely unaware of it. Just like what Xie Jingxing said, towards his daughter, he thought that he loved her dearly, but he could not even understand her at the beginning. Then in these years, what did he actually do? He looked at the remaining chess pieces on the table for a long, long time. When his eyes began to ache, he said softly, "Tell me everything. Everything that you know about Jiao Jiao. Tell me everything." When Pei Lang woke up, he was in an unfamiliar place. There were many well-dressed maids around to serve him as he drank his medicine. Pei Lang's memory before he fainted was that in the dungeon of Prince Ding's residence, there was a black-clad masked man who saved him from the fire. Perhaps it was that person who saved him because he was still alive. He did not know who the person who saved him was, and did not know why that person wanted to save him. After asking the maids who came to serve him, he only knew that this was the residence of Prince Ru. Pei Lang faintly sensed that there might be some friendship between Shen Miao and Prince Rui, but he did not know how far the two of them had walked. He thought that Prince Rui would naturally not take him in for no reason, and if he did, it would definitely be because of Shen Miao. Shen Miao did not give up on him. When he thought of this, Pei Lang's heart was slightly moved. It was as if everything that he persisted in was worth it at this moment, even though Pei Lang did not understand where this inexplicable thought came from. Just as he was thinking, the door to the room was opened. A young man walked in from the outside with a medicine box on his back. He sat down in front of him as if he was going to take his pulse. Pei Lang initially did not look seriously and thought that this was the physician that the residents of Prince Rue had invited for him. When he saw the appearance of the physician clearly, he was slightly surprised before calling out, "Imperial Physician Gao." His movements were too big and affected the wounds on his body. He could not help but let out a hissing sound as he sucked in a breath of cold air. Gao Yang quickly pressed on his wound and said, "Don't be so surprised. Be careful not to tear your wound." Pei Lang looked at Gao Yang, many thoughts churning in his mind. Gao Yang was the youngest imperial physician in the Imperial Academy of Medicine. He was said to be highly skilled, but no one could say for sure. But the imperial family was extremely fond of this young imperial physician. Most likely it was because he was good with words and often made Emperor Wen Hui happy. In addition to his good looks, in the eyes of the imperial concubines, he was more pleasing to the eye than those old men in the imperial physician court. Since he was an imperial physician from the palace, he would not treat people outside the palace for no reason. Moreover, this was the residence of Prince Rui. Pei Lang's first thought was that Prince Rui had borrowed Gao Yang from Emperor Wen Hui, but this thought was quickly rejected by Pei Lang. Even though the medical skills of the Ding capital were precious, it was not only Gao Yang alone. Prince Rui did not need to find Gao Yang and alarm the imperial family. Then the second possibility was that Gao Yang and Prince Rui had some friendship in private. This possibility was really shocking. He looked up at Gao Yang and his eyes were somewhat doubtful, but his face had a gentle and elegant smile. Why is Imperial Physician Gao here? Chapter 853. As Gao Yang was taking Pei Lang's pulse, he said, "Prince Rui summoned me over to take a look at your illness, so I came over." After he finished taking the pulse, he said, "It is almost stabilized. But Prince Ding had previously used torture on your legs and injured your muscles and bones. I have to give you acupuncture, otherwise your legs would be crippled in a short while." Pei Lang was surprised for a moment. Fu Xiaoyi was extremely ruthless towards him and seemed to hate those who betrayed him. Even though he did not want his life, he most likely did not think of keeping him alive. Thus he did not care much about crippled limbs. In fact, if no one had saved him from the fire, according to Fu Xiaoyi's words, his kneecaps would have been dug out in these few days. At this moment, hearing Gao Yang's words, even if Pei Lang was always calm, his heart could not help but feel a sense of survival after a disaster. Fu Xiaoyi's actions are really ruthless. Gao Yang took out a row of golden needles from the medical box and let Gao Yang prepare them. He then rolled up his trousers and started to slowly apply the needles. One could not see that he is so ruthless from the outside. Pei Lang's heart moved. Gao Yang was after all an official of Ming Qi and an imperial physician who specially treated the imperial family, but he actually called Prince Ding by his name. Not only that, when he spoke of Fu Xiaoyi, there was no trace of respect in his tone, as if he was commenting on an insignificant person. With Gao Yang's identity, not only was he not cautious, he was like this. It was somewhat strange. Gao Yang did not even raise his head and concentrated on applying the needles on Pei Lang when he suddenly opened his mouth. "Do you want to ask what kind of friendship do I have with Prince Rui?" Pei Lang paused before smiling. "Is Imperial Physician Gao willing to tell this one?" "To tell you the truth, I am Prince Rui's person," Gao Yang said. This time it was Pei Lang's turn to be speechless. He was surprised at Gao Yang's identity, but what surprised him the most was that Gao Yang actually told him this secret without concealing anything. What was Gao Yang now? A spy sent by the great Liang to Ming Qi? What was the reason for him to lurk in the imperial family of Ming Qi? To poison Emperor Wen Hui? Or was he directly bought over by Prince Rui and instigated a rebellion? "Are you surprised that I would tell you such a big secret?" Gao Yang seemed to be able to guess what Pei Lang was thinking and continued. "Correct." Pei Lang frankly said, "I indeed do not understand." "What's so difficult about that?" Gao Yang smiled. There was a big fire in the residence of Prince Ding, and after the fire was extinguished, Fu Xiaoyi would send people to search for your bones. Fu Xiaoyi is not a fool and would know that someone saved you. The person who saved you even burned down his dungeon. Fu Xiaoyi will naturally put this account on your head. After provoking the residence of Prince Ding, only the residence of Prince Rui can protect you in Mingqi. No matter if you are willing or not, you are tied together with the residence of Prince Rui. Since that is the case, we are all on the same side, so what secret cannot be said? Gao Yang raised his head and smiled at Pei Lang. We are all grasshoppers on the same boat? Pei Lang didn't know what had happened, but he was forcefully tied together by someone. They even said that they were grasshoppers in the same boat. He didn't know whether he should be depressed or not. But he quickly caught the crux of Gao Yang's words. The fire in Prince Ding's residence was set by you? Gao Yang, of course. Pei Lang sucked in a breath of cold air. That dungeon was the most important place in the entire residence of Prince Ding, and the people locked there were very useful to Fu Xiaoyi. To be burned down by someone, Pei Lang could guess the raging anger in Fu Xiaoyi's heart. Under the heavens, there was actually someone who dared to do that. What Gao Yang said was right. In the entire Ding capital, the only place that Fu Xiaoyi feared was the residence of Prince Rui, and only the residence of Prince Rui could protect him. Pei Lang hesitated for a moment but still asked the question that he wanted to ask the most. It was Prince Rui who saved me? Otherwise, who would have such great ability to save you out? Gao Yang said, no one would dare to take this risk. But why did he save me? Pei Lang probed. Was it because someone else requested him to do so? He did not know if Gao Yang knew about Shen Miao's matter, thus he did not dare to say Shen Miao's name, fearing that it would bring trouble to Shen Miao. Gao Yang looked at him meaningfully and pierced a golden needle into his knee. Pei Lang's brows slightly wrinkled as he heard Gao Yang saying, correct. It was because of our Wang Fei's request. Pei Lang was surprised for a moment. Wang Fei Rui? He had never heard that Prince Rui had any Wang Fei and did not know what kind of friendship he had with Consort Rui, so he asked, why did Consort Rui? Most likely it was because of the teacher and student relationship with you. Gao Yang smiled considerately. Consort Rui was after all your student. Pei Lang, she is Shen Miao. Chapter 854. This year in Mingqi was considered to be happy, but it was also not that happy. The happy thing was that when the family gathered together, it was always a happy thing. The unhappy thing was that once the year was over, Shen Miao would have to marry to the great Liang. As the days neared, everyone in the Shen mansion were very busy every day. Shen Miao's dowry, the guards and servants, dowry maids and the roads that the great Liang's carriages and horses would have to travel, all had to be prepared. Even though the dowry that Shen Xian prepared for Shen Miao could not be compared to the betrothal gifts that Xie Jingxing gave, it was still very substantial. Shops and fields were not given as there was no use in the great Liang. Due to the weariness of the carriages, there was not much furniture that could be brought. Other than some rare jewelry, basically everything was converted into shining silver. In a foreign country, other things might be dispensable, but silver was indispensable, and it was much more convenient to have cash on hand. Originally the money that Shen Xian and wife prepared for Shen Miao was enough, but Shen Qiu secretly pulled Shen Miao to one side and took out a thick stack of banknotes from his sleeves and said, "This is the banknotes from the money house and can be used in the Great Liang." He then blushed. "Eldest brother does not have any extra things and only have these banknotes for you. Younger sister must not complain that it is too little." Shen Miao looked at the crumpled banknotes that Shen Qiu pinched, and a warm current flowed through her heart. Shen Qiu was after all a young male, and those soldiers from the Ministry of War worked hard for him daily, so naturally Shen Qiu would occasionally return the favor and treat them to a meal or something. Shen Qiu's salary was not much, and most of it was the rewards from his military exploits. He did not keep it for his future marriage but gave it to her. Shen Miao's heart was touched and said, "Eldest brother, the banknotes that father and mother gave me can allow me to not worry about food and clothing for a lifetime. Why do you give me these for?" Father and mother are father and mother, and older brother are older brother. How can what I give you be the same as what father and mother gave you? Shen Qiu was anxious and stuffed the banknotes into Shen Miao's hands before leaving without looking back. Shen Miao looked at his back view and did not know whether to laugh or cry. She thought that she had to find a chance to let Mo Qing secretly return it to Shen Qiu. Just as she was thinking, she saw Shen Xen walking in from outside. "Jiao Jiao, father has something to tell you. Come, let us go to the study." When Luo Shui Yen heard this, she was about to follow him in. She said, "Just as well, mother has something to tell you." "It is not late for Furen to explain later." Shen Xen said, "Let me and Father Jiao Jiao have a few words alone." Luo Shui Yen snorted disdainfully, but did not follow them in. She thought that Shen Xian wanted to secretly give Shen Miao money or other things, so she did not think much about it. Shen Miao followed Shen Xian into the study. Shen Xen let the servants guard the door outside and let Shen Miao sit at the table in the room and gave Shen Miao pastries and tea to eat. He then sat down opposite Shen Miao and sighed deeply. "After a few more days, Jiao Jiao, you will be getting married. I intend to let Mo Qing follow you to Great Liang." Pausing for a moment, Shen Xian then said, "Even though Prince Rui is Emperor Yong Li's younger brother and has quite a status in the Great Liang, but there are always many disputes in the imperial family and some matters may not be as simple as it looks on the surface. When you reach there, you must not wrong yourself. If someone bullies you, just tell Prince Rui that you are the one that Prince Rui married with 1,000 gold and silver, so he will always protect you. You must not shoulder it yourself and leave it to him to handle." Shen Miao complied. "If Prince Rui is unable to protect you, do not be afraid, as there is still father and mother. I have picked a few people from the Shen family's army. Even though their skills are not comparable to Mo Qing's, they are not ordinary people. They will be dressed as the dowry guards of the Shen residents for you to bring over. At least do not let yourself suffer a loss." Shen Xen patiently enticed, and Shen Miao finally could not help but open her mouth to ask, "Father, you and mother have never thought of leaving Mingqi?" Chapter 855. Shen Xen was startled and looked at Shen Miao without speaking. Since the words were already spoken, Shen Miao might as well say it all out. "Now that I have married to the Great Liang, the emperor will definitely be estranged from the Shen family. Even though father and mother are still military generals, in the future the emperor will not put you in an important position. The monarch's mind has always been hard to guess, and if the emperor has other thoughts, it is better to go to the Great Liang with the excuse of not feeling at ease with me. If one does not want the military power, then so be it. Anyway, if one stays in Mingqi, one day the military power would be taken back." Her words were very tactful, and if it was before, after hearing Shen Miao's words, Shen Xian would definitely be somewhat at a loss. But that day Xie Jingxing spoke to him for a long time, and after listening to Shen Miao's hints, Shen Xian immediately understood. He could not help but smile bitterly in his heart. So his own daughter had already reminded him so many times, but why did he not take it to heart even once? Was it because of the Shen family's teachings of being loyal to the country? Or was it that he did not believe that what Shen Miao said was true from the bottom of his heart? Shen Xen said, "The imperial family wants to suppress the Shen family and is afraid of the military power in my hands, so they will definitely not let the Shen family leave Mingqi easily. Moreover, they still want to use the Shen family to restrain you." Shen Miao was surprised for a moment. All along, she had scruples about Shen Xen and dared not speak too clearly about the indifference of the imperial family of Mingqi. It was not that Shen Xen was foolishly loyal, but Shen Xen was taught by old General Shen since young to be loyal to the monarch and serve the country. It was a long process for one to overturn the things that one had revered for decades, and some people would not be able to do it in their entire life. But at the moment Shen Xian's words seemed to be able to see through it. Shen Xian said, "Father knows of Jiao Jiao's concerns, but father still cannot leave. If father is determined, even if one uses some means, one would be able to leave." Shen Miao said, "The Tian family want to use the Shen family to restrain me, or use me to restrain the Shen family. The scheme is good, and one is not afraid of losing one's wife and losing one's soldiers." At the end, there was a faint hostility in her brows and her words became sharp. Shen Xen laughed out loud. Originally one felt that Jiao Jiao was too gentle and graceful, and was not like a young lady from my military family. Now seeing you like this, it is exactly the same as this father, and has a bit of heroism. You're not afraid of power and have a clear mind. Very good. He took a sip of tea and said, with Jiao Jiao's intelligence, it wouldn't be difficult for her to find a solution. But what about the future? Future? Shen Miao was puzzled. What future? Jiao Jiao. Shen Exen suddenly opened his mouth. The Tian family see the Shen family as a thorn in their eyes. Even if there is a day when Ming Qi is strong and prosperous, there will be a day when the Shen family will become a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Shen Exen gave a long sigh. Our Shen family is upright and not afraid of crooked shadows. Even if we die, we would not be afraid. It is just that we are not willing to let your mother, your eldest brother and you be implicated, and even more not wish for the Shen family to be upright for generations, and for the loyalty and virtuous reputation of your grandfather and ancestors to be insulted. Shen Miao's heart thumped. She had guessed what Shen Exen was going to say, but she did not dare to believe it. In the next moment, Shen Exen's voice rang out, Shen Exen, quit being a loyal servant of the Tian family. Shen Miao suddenly looked up and said, Father, Jiao Jiao need not persuade me. Shen Exen laughed heartily. Even though I, your father, am loyal, I will not be loyal to a heartless and unscrupulous person. I will not throw away the entire family's lives. Just like what you have seen, if my Shen family were to follow you to the Great Liang now, and if there is a day when the Great Liang attacks the Ming Qi, the commoners would scold our Shen family as rebels and scold you for helping the evildoer. We will not carry this inexplicable stigma. Chapter 856. And we will stay in the Ding capital and you will marry far away. If there is a day when Ming Qi and the Great Liang meet in battle, and you do not appear, you are just a female, living alone in a foreign country and helpless, thus the commoners will not blame you. And it is even more impossible for my Shen family to collude with the Great Liang in Ming Qi, so naturally we will not carry a groundless stigma. Shen Miao shook her head. In that case, could it be that father will use the name of the Shen family's army to replace Ming Qi to fight against the Great Liang? Shen Exen smiled. Before that, His Majesty will definitely take action against the Shen family. Even if His Majesty does not make a move, I have a way to make him make a move against the Shen family. Shen Exen looked at the tea on the table. The Tian family is suspicious and only need to do some tricks to let the Emperor hear some groundless rumors. The Emperor has been afraid of the Shen family for a long time and would definitely not be able to restrain himself from making a move. What he said was sarcasm. He had fought for Emperor Wenhui for many years, protected the country and risked his life many times, but as long as a villain said some slanderous words in front of Emperor Wenhui would forget about the loyalty of the officials and would not hesitate to kill the other party. Once there was a threat to his throne, or if there was a little bit of doubt, Emperor Wenhui would not leave behind a disaster for himself. Wait till that day. Shen Exen's gaze suddenly sunk. The day the imperial family is unjust to our Shen family would be the day the Shen family rises in revolt. They were not willing for the Shen family to carry a tainted name, but they were also not willing to sacrifice the living for the sake of clarity and become the despicable imperial power's sacrificial pawns. So they wanted to let the common people of the world see clearly that it was the imperial family who was heartless to the Shen family first, then the Shen family would be unjust to the imperial family. Perhaps as compared to the imperial family, the formidable great general with outstanding military exploits would have a higher prestige among the common people of Ming Qi. Shen Exen wanted to make use of this point to have a contest of hearts with the imperial family. This was the counterattack of the Shen family against the heavenly family of Ming Qi. But Shen Miao was not thinking about this point at the moment. What she thought was that this was not Shen Exen's style of doing things. The people of the Shen family were straightforward. They would speak their mind and would not play with other people's schemes. Other than on the battlefield, they were as magnanimous as a piece of white paper most of the time. This was why Shen Miao had always taken on everything by herself since she was reborn. Firstly, the Shen family could not scheme against a person's heart. Secondly, she was afraid that in the eyes of the Shen family, her current appearance would be seen as scheming and sinister. But what Shen Xian was doing now was plotting in the dark. It was impossible for Shen Xian to take the initiative to do such a thing. Whether it was because he heard what others said or someone made a request, Shen Miao almost immediately thought of one person, Xie Jingxing. She looked at Shen Xian and wanted to speak but was speechless. Shen Xian seemed to have seen the entanglement in her heart and smiled as he patted her head. Originally, I always felt that Jiao Jiao would not grow up, but after Jiao Jiao was alone in the Ding capital, she grew up. I used to think that it's not good for little girls to be too mature, but now, I'm very glad. He smiled and said, in this way, even if father and mother aren't around, Jiao Jiao can protect herself. Shen Miao said, Father, if the Shen family cannot protect themselves, write a letter to the great Liang. I am the daughter of the Shen family and I will think of a way. This is what men do. You're a girl, do you really think of yourself as a man? Shen Xian laughed in spite of himself, but our family's Jiao Jiao is the best young lady in the world. Thinking about it, it is still a loss to marry Prince Ru. Shen Miao felt that her nose was a little sour. It seemed that at this moment, she clearly understood that in this lifetime, she was about to leave her family. Even though Prince Rue is a little cunning and sinister, he is still trustworthy. Since he promised to marry you, he would protect you. If you like him, then do not worry about anything. Like what you like and do what you want to do. Chapter 857. I know. Shen Miao softly said. Shen Xian looked at Shen Miao and after looking for a while, he then smiled, after a few more years. After a few more years, father promises you that one will definitely come and look for you. Shen Miao gently smiled, I will wait for father. Ever since that day when Shen Xian and Shen Miao had a long private talk in the study, Shen Xian and Shen Miao's relationship seemed to be closer as Shen Miao often watched Shen Xian practice martial arts in the courtyard. This made Shen Qiu very jealous as he said, recently younger sister is sticking to father and does not even care about me. Shen Miao however felt that there was a tacit secret between her and Shen Xian. Shen Xian had become the person who understood her the most in the Shen family, thus there were no scruples when speaking. Most of the time, she was advising Shen Xian on how to guard against the heavenly family. She had stayed in the palace for so long in her previous life and had some understanding of the imperial family of Mingqi. When it was said to Shen Xian was very surprised as he did not know where did Shen Miao got to know all these. Naturally Shen Miao did not hesitate to push all the credit to Xie Jingxing, which made Shen Xian to be more vigilant of Xie Jingxing. With such scheming skills, one must not underestimate him and one must be more vigilant, lest one be sold off by others. Speaking of Xie Jingxing, Shen Miao also asked if Xie Jingxing had said anything to Shen Xian. Xie Jingxing did not admit nor deny it. Seeing his attitude, Shen Miao had an idea in her heart. Speaking of what would happen to the Shen family in Mingqi, Xie Jingxing said that with his support in Mingqi's Ding capital, nothing would happen to the Shen family. With these words of his, Shen Miao was relieved. In a blink of an eye, it was the night before the wedding. On the second day, Shen Miao would be getting married from the Shen family and bring the bridal sedan to stroll around the entire Ding capital. After the bustling ceremony, she would leave the Ding capital city gates and majestically leave Mingqi and head towards the Great Liang. The things that should be brought were brought and the people that should be brought were also brought. Even Shen Miao did not forget about Pei Lang. With Pei Lang's identity, it was very dangerous for him to stay in the Ding capital and Fu Xiuyi would definitely dig 3 feet into the ground to find him, thus it was better to let Pei Lang mix into the wedding procession and head to the Great Liang together. Previously Shen Miao thought that even if it was because of Lu Ying, Pei Lang would not easily agree to go to the Great Liang and would have to persuade him. But she only mentioned it in the letter and Pei Lang very readily replied to her saying that he agreed to go to the Great Liang. This made Shen Miao somewhat puzzled as she thought if it was Xie Jingxing who threatened Pei Lang, but she felt that Xie Jingxing would not do such a thing. If Pei Lang stayed in Mingqi or the Great Liang, Xie Jingxing would not care whether he was alive or dead. Shen Miao was getting married tomorrow, and other than the sleepless night in the Shen residence, naturally there were others who did not have the heart to sleep. The princess mansion was one of them. Princess Rong Exen paced back and forth in the room. She had dismissed all the servants as she was afraid that her abnormal actions would arouse suspicions. Ever since she discovered that Prince Rui was Xie Jingxing, even though Princess Rong Exen had a lot of doubts, she never took the initiative to go to the residence of Prince Rui to ask Xie Jingxing. She knew that there were many eyes and ears in the Ding capital, and even though she was a princess who did not care about worldly affairs, it did not mean that there was no one who did not pay attention to her every move. If there were people who discovered something and followed the vines to the melon to find out Xie Jingxing's identity, what would happen at that time? Princess Rong Exen would always remember some old feelings towards Xie Jingxing. She was wary of him, suspicious of him and vigilant of him, but could not forget the past years of companionship. She could not forget that in those lonely days, it was Xie Jingxing who came to talk to her, allowing her to pass through the difficult times of being a widow. One's feelings were very complicated and there was no pure love or hate. If one could clearly distinguish love and hate, most likely many things in the world would become much easier. The most difficult thing was that love was mixed in, thus one could not harden one's heart and act as if nothing had happened. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.